Salutations, my friends, and thank you for tuning in to another edition of Factions of Freedom. I'm your host, Noise Era, Freedom Faction, whichever one you prefer, and that just gave me chills. This is show number 2, and I entitled this episode, Executing the Siege, Second Wave Fears and Troubling Times. The clip you just heard right there was the good folks of Australia fighting up against these COVID-19 tyrannical lockdown orders. That's right, you have the people of Australia waking up to this tyranny, as Americans are sitting here held hostage by corrupt politicians and terrorists. But first, before we get into this, a few quick updates. If you didn't listen to the high-octane minicast we did with David Nino Rodriguez exposing the enslavement, you're missing out. We doubled up by doing an episode breaking down the BLM co-founder Patrisse Cullors admitting that she practices witchcraft. Yeah, that's right, she does this. Spirit cooking on a whole nother level. I won't lie to you, ladies and gentlemen. The content covered in this episode is really, really intense. It is not a lighthearted episode. We're talking about the 50-day siege on the White House, economic turmoil, spiritual corruption, and so much more. But first, a few quick updates. If you haven't gotten Sorrel food, check the link in the description bar below. We have that in spades. Lastly, if you guys want to support this operation, think about becoming a patreon.com/exclusive member. Every dollar helps, and I go over that in this edition and some of the other changes that are coming down the pipeline. And with that being said, let's start the show. Salutations, my friends, and thank you for tuning in to another edition of Factions of Freedom. I'm your host, Noise Era, Freedom Faction, whichever one you prefer, and this is show number 1031, season 10, episode 31. You know, we have a lot of different things to talk about, from Antifa doing their White House siege to BLM admitting that they're practicing witchcraft to the so-called Jacob's trouble, as prophesied in the Bible, Israel signing that peace treaty. You know, there's a lot of different things going on in the world right now. Yeah. And there's nothing else for me to really say. I mean, we'll jump right into the news. You know, you can see the headlines. You can see right outside your window. There's no conspiracy going on, man. It's out there in the open. That's a lot of what I freaked out about earlier this week. The externalization of the hierarchy, right? How they're saying, yeah, no, we want your babies. Yeah, no, we practice witchcraft. Yeah, no, we are pedophiles. Yeah, no, we do this strange stuff. It's no longer like hearsay, or I don't have to have documents, or I don't have to pull up, statements from Ted Gunderson, retired head of the FBI, California head division. I don't have to pull up any of this information. Like, you can go out there and you can see it. And people are so charged these days. Whether or not they wear their hearts on their sleeves, or if they're so politically active and charged, you can tell what type of people are these days, man. You can see whether or not they're pulling from something good and wholesome and decent, or whether or not they got something working through them that they need to work through. You get me? Here's what I'm trying to say. And I'll say this, I'll tell you guys this little quick story as the intro, and then we'll get the episode started. I had one of my buddies called me earlier today, or yesterday, or the day before yesterday, a couple nights ago, and he popped into the Instagram Live a couple weeks ago. I talked about him, and he just told me how he basically gave his life over to God, and he had talked to me about, again, being plagued by a demon that he thought he had since childhood, and so I had known him since childhood, and one of the girls that he was with, I thought, man, this chick over here, she's doing some dark demonic stuff, bro. Over here, painting herself up and looking kind of strange, and looking at dark textbooks and occultic stuff. We'll get into this in the second segment, but it's a good thing to start. And he says, no, EJ, you got it all backwards, bud. I did her wrong. I was cheating on her. I wasn't being faithful. I wasn't being forward. I was leading her on.
I was not the faithful one. And so he tells me this story about how he basically gave his life over to Christ. He's out there in Seattle. He's got a new lady now. She's a correctional officer. He's taking care of her kid, of her kid, and it was just so powerful. But to hear him tell me of this story of overcoming this fear demon was so powerful. It was such a powerful testimony. I wish you guys could have heard it. He's talking about how, because he's a practicing Aikido master, like he's been doing that for the past 12 years. Even while doing Aikido, he felt like something was plaguing him. He would have people over that were spiritually sensitive, and he would talk about it, and it would manifest himself until one day, he finally decided to do something about it. And his Aikido master, his teacher, right, ended up being a Christian and ended up reaching out to other people within the community to help him cleanse and get rid of the spirit. And I thought, wow, that is such a powerful testimony. And there's more to it, but I wanted to start this episode off by telling you guys, there is a very real and obvious battle against good and evil, and people have to choose good. It's not going to be easy. We freaked out, or I freak out all the time about the escalation of evil, but to a degree I shouldn't, because that just shows where people are operating at and the choices they make. So to put like a good bow on the end of the story, he tells me that he just had some stuff going on, and at the time, my lady was making a cake because we have eggs, endless amounts of eggs because of the chickens we have now. So we were just making cakes, and I pulled out my phone, and he says, I was just having a wild hair. I was going to go pick up some food to go have dinner with my lady's girl. She's basically my daughter now, and I remember catching your live the other day, and you were talking about God and trying to do all this, and it just really touched me, and I just wanted to give you a call. He gave me a call. Ladies making cake. I said, shucks, yeah, I'll take some time. I'll listen to you, bud. What's going on? He's like, I've just got some stuff going on, and I just wanted to tell you how I gave my life over to Christ. And I'm like, you know what, man, that is so powerful. Like, I wish, and this was what I said, I wish that I could have such a concrete, definable moment of being able to go through that transformative process. He was talking about how on the Instagram Live, I called myself like a pseudo-Christian. And I still do, even though I still study the texts, look at the scripture, and study the word like every day. And I thank God every day. I don't feel like I'm like a devout Christian like most people. But I said, I wish I could define my conversion as much as you. I think just seeing all of this, and I think, and this is how I'm trying to start the show, seeing all of this overt evil escalate over the several years of doing this, it has done nothing but make my faith that much stronger. And I think that's what a lot of people here who have listened to the show for extended periods of time can hear. It's not, like I tell you, I'm not trying to jam my faith down your throat. I'm just trying to talk to you guys about my own personal experiences confronting all of this and how I do need God through a lot of the things that we do. We should be, if anything, having more prayers to start the show off so that we don't get hack attack, so that we don't get like our connection severed. There's a lot of different things that have happened over the years, guys, and I know it sounds silly. I know a lot of people don't think I'm real, like I'm just some fake personality, but this stuff is very real, and there is an obvious battle for good and evil. And if you can't tune into that, you're probably not wanting to tune into that, and that's a different discussion. I'll say this, and I'll get started with the show. He says, oh, EJ, like a lot of people around me are atheistic. Sometimes they mock me because of my faith. And I'm like, that's okay, bro. Like, real talk, that's okay. Because it takes a lot of faith to be an atheist. It takes a lot of faith to be it takes a lot of faith to say that there is no God. Okay. And I said, you know what? But don't let those people take your faith from you. Okay. The fact that they like to heckle, demean, persecute, and do all these different types of things, that just means that they have no faith of their own, that they truly do believe in nothing. If anything, and I've been having a lot of conversations with kids lately, this is what I was trying to talk to him about. If anything, what you need to do is try to figure out how to turn these adversaries, these spiritual adversaries, into allies. A lot of the people that come at you, they have these issues because they have no understanding of it themselves. Talk about what God has done for you. Talk about how you've gone through the process. Don't try to Bible thump and throw it at people. Just be honest. Just lay it out there. People think it's some hunky dory, milk toast type thing. It's really not. Christians are some of the most radical people I've ever met as far as their faith, man. They're disciplined. And people who say they have no faith in God and then attack others, that's truly because they come from a place of either arrogance, ignorance, or foolishness. And so you have to rectify that with truth. And so it was a powerful conversation. I won't go off on a jag, but you guys get what I'm saying. I wanted to start this episode off with this because we are being confronted with so much overt corruption and lawlessness that it is in fact summoning the authoritarianism that we've talked about time and time again. And I think with that being said, it's the best for us to get into the show. Oh, yeah, it's going to be one of those types of episodes, ladies and gentlemen. Just before coming onto the air, right? Just before I got here with you guys, Instagram was down. Instagram and Fedbook was down. Hack attack, who knows? I think it was because of the hashtag White House siege that's going on right now. But here, let's go ahead and start getting into this. 2 weeks ago, we covered with you Adbusters calling for a 50-day siege starting on September 17th, which is today, the day that we're recording, uniting all the domestic terrorist groups for the New World Order. This was 2 weeks ago. We put this up September 17th. It comes from Jeffrey Grider over there at Now the Ends Begins. And now we have the Transition Integrity Project being funded by Bill Gates and George Soros. Not Bill Gates, just George Soros. Bill Clinton is behind the Clinton Global Initiative. Now we have Antifa, BLM, Refuge Fascism, Indivisible, the Women's March. We have all these different groups being funded by Soros, and it legit feels like something out of Lord of the Rings, where there's just these massive armies of different people coming together to lay siege on the White House, to cause such political chaos and such civil disobedience that things are crazy. I'm going to get into this, and then we're just going to try to start flying through some of these articles to paint that picture of what's going on. If you're feeling the tension, it's because of what's happening right now. It's the organization, not necessarily of evil, but the manipulation of the heavens. Let's get into this. It says, we will lay siege to the White House, and we will sustain it for exactly 50 days. This is the White House siege. If you thought that the last 4 months of watching America's democratically controlled cities be set on fire, hundreds of millions in damage to minority-owned businesses, women raped, 13 people killed by the Antifa and Black Lives Matter domestic terrorist groups was something, just wait until September 17th, today. That's the day that the basement-dwelling founders of Occupy Wall Street are going to attempt to combine all the anarchistic, I wouldn't even call them terroristic groups, and lay siege to the White House for 50 days. They have a better chance of success than you might think. Take a look at the videos on social media and get a good look at who these people are. They are cowardly, effeminate, and decidedly pusillanimous as individuals. One such thug wielding a flamethrower was captured by police in Portland the other night, and he curled into fetal position and cried like a baby as the handcuffs were placed on him. But when they gather in packs, like animals, with bats and guns, they are capable of great damage. You should really take a look at the videos. This says that Adbusters is calling for a new world order. Sounds about right given the year is 2020. The evil geniuses at Adbusters anarchistic media have had a Hitlerian moment of clarity, and they have seen the future. Combine all these radicals together at the same place at the same time at the White House on September 17th and bring America to a grinding halt. Will it work? Actually, it has a pretty good chance of working, because if they do lay siege to the White House, they will have full support of the Democratic Party. AOC, Nancy Pelosi, Congress, and Democratic VP candidate Kamala Harris, who have all said that they support the riots and that they need to continue. Now, this was said 2 weeks ago, ladies and gentlemen, and we've just come up with more and more and more and more information. Now, I won't bore you with the details. I kind of want to just jump right into the next critical piece of information, going over this right here. Operation Overthrow, George Soros-funded Transition Integrity Project has a plan in place to remove Trump from office, whether he wins or not. This is another article by Jeffrey Grutter over there. Now the end begins. He put this up September 16th, just yesterday. Now, before I get into this, one of the things I had pointed out on Instagram Live with you guys earlier this week about Antifa, BLM, Refuse Fascism, George Soros, even Factions of Freedom, man, and what we're doing here. All of these things will exist outside of me. Right now, what we're experiencing is our own generation's fight. We've talked about it before, Zebellion, right? Where the Pentagon plans to take on essentially Generation Z. We're in those decided days right now. What we do today paints the landscape for the future of tomorrow. Real talk. And I know it doesn't make sense. I know things are so monumental that people almost feel paralyzed by this, but you cannot. You cannot. I had this kind of revelation with you guys again earlier this week that this stuff is going to outlive me. Even if they do declare Antifa a domestic terrorist group, if they do arrest some of the leadership, if they do come after these people, it's an ideology. Ideas are bulletproof, and they will always retain their power. Words will always keep their magic, and they will do the work that many people cannot. There will come a time, my friends, whenever I am not here, but the ideology that is Freedom Faction, the construct that we have created, will transcend me. Because it's not me that's here. It is something greater. And we've talked about what that great force is. And it is to that great force that we serve. You see, we're not racists. We're not white supremacists. We're not any ists, any isms, homophobes, any of that type of nonsense, man. We're human beings. And what we're talking about is relatively common sense, but this supersedes even that because it's a sense of normalcy that we're fighting for, and they're having an assault against it. And so when we talk about all these things, these gangs that are being created, these ideologies that they represent, right, you really have to get down to that. And we're seeing those days take place. That's why there's a very small minority of us, but we're out there, and we're aware. Let's get back into this, right? Executing the siege. This is important stuff, what we're talking about right here. They're literally talking about creating a whole separate government, a whole separate presidency. I went into this with Nino Rodriguez on the episode we did last week. You guys can check it out, exposing the enslavement. We talked about that, how the Western states could potentially break off and form their own union. This is where we're at right now. We're literally talking about separatist societies operating. This is like Chaz and CHOP, the Capitol Hill Autonomous Zone, Occupy Wall Street. It's like these type of organizations and movements, but like on a political and presidential scale. Let's get back into this. Like I said, Operation Overthrow. George Soros funded Transition Integrity Project has a plan in place to remove Trump from office, whether he wins or not. Another article by Jeffrey Grutter over there at Now the End Begins. It says the Transition Integrity Group, or Transition Integrity Project Group, funded by George Soros for the Democrats, used a role-playing game similar to a military-style planning exercise and concluded there will be a disruptive and lawless 11 weeks between the election day and inauguration day. Major portions of this article were co-written with the award-winning author Laura Demonia. The level of research and attention to detail she provided made this article possible. I extend my most heartfelt appreciation to her for bringing all this information to my attention at exactly the right time. You guys better thank her as well. It says that the Transition Integrity Project Group was formed in December of 2019. It's funded by George Soros, and its formation speaks to the very false idea created by Democrats that Trump will not accept a Biden victory and refuse to leave office, which is more likely translated into, quote, they know he'll be the clear winner as he was in 2016, but he needs to go away. Despite trying to impeach him, follow-up plans were already underway to force him out no matter what. That was also the plan. Yeah, even Nancy Pelosi has said that the presidency is a title, the White House. It's just a location. It says the Democrats have now created the false narrative that Donald Trump would refuse to leave the White House should he lose the election. Together with Soros, formed the Transition Integrity Project to have a framework in which they could remove Trump, win or lose. That's the game. That's the game here. It's a real deal coup in progress, and that's it. We're watching history right in front of us. So no matter who wins in November, the Democrats will make sure that the massive chaos and confusion begins immediately as they attempt to install Kamala Harris as the president. This is how the Democrats plan on taking control of the country on election night. It says 67 people participated as, quote, active players, and many others were observers and gave feedback. Some of the participants were John Podesta. He played the role of Joe Biden, and a few others in attendance were Michelle Steele, Donna Brazile, and former Hillary Clinton advisor Paul Eaton. Plans to remove Trump from office, even if he wins the election, are well underway. One highlight of the report states that the, quote, concept of the election night is no longer accurate and indeed dangerous. The TIP report, dated August 3rd, 2020, was made available to the public and details the, quote, crisis scenario planning exercises. And before I continue on, I want to read a little bit right here. Some of the scenarios that they've put out there. They say that cognitively challenged Joe Biden will step aside to make Kamala Harris president. This is also part of the Transition Integrity Project's plan. Here's a couple of scenarios. They have 4 scenarios, and I'll just read them out to you. It says game 1, an ambiguous win by Biden. The first game investigated a scenario in which the outcome of the election remained unclear from the election night and throughout the gameplay. Game 2 says a clear Biden victory. The Trump campaign team again attempted to federalize the National Guard to end further vote counting and called on supporters to turn out in large numbers. The Biden campaign established a bipartisan transition team and mobilized supporters to ensure vote counting was completed thoroughly. In this scenario, Biden won outright in the Electoral College and the popular vote. Game number 3, it says that the third scenario posited a comfortable Electoral College victory for President Trump, 286 to 252, but also a significant popular vote win, 52%, and 47% for former Vice President Biden. And game number 4 is where Biden has a narrow win. The final scenario explored a narrow Biden win where he heads with less than 1% of the popular vote the day after the election and is predicted to win 278 electoral votes. If you guys go on to read the report, it basically talks about how they're planning for chaos. I saw the Health and Human Services Administrator come out earlier this week talking about armed conflict on the election night. So they're already telling you that they're going to have conflict, that they're going to have chaos, that they're going to have the destabilization. The riots, the shootings, the burnings, the stabbings, the Kyle Rittenhouse, the Michael Rowan, all those people, the convicted pedophile shootings, that's just to get you started. That's what I'm telling you. It is like Gotham out there. He goes on to say that they anticipate with a high degree of certainty that this November's election will be marked by a chaotic legal and political landscape. They are warning us now, even though some dismiss this as a conspiracy theory, what they intend to carry out. The report concludes that there needs to be a robust strategy to challenge the white supremacists and the extremist networks that enable Trump's rise to power. One article depicted an image of Hitler next to Trump. Even the language in the report claiming Trump rose to power and wasn't elected by the people shows how determined they are to remove him by any means. In the 22-page report, the word violence was used 15 times and the chaos 9. So now, a playbook is being embraced, supporting the public's peaceful protest as well as the blaming the Trump supporters for the street-level chaos as part of it. People taking to the streets in large numbers for an extended period of time is already being prepared to intensify. A group called the Fight Back Table met recently to make their plans for the upcoming, quote, mass public unrest. The executive director of MoveOn.org was a participant. That's George Soros funded. It says that the group used the Transition Integrity Project report as part of their planning as they, too, prepare for the upcoming mass unrest and violence. Those in the media are priming and preparing and programming the public to the, quote, Trump refusing to leave office narrative. Remember, there is, quote, no one above the law line during the impeachment attempt. Well, the new one will be that, quote, Trump's refusing to leave office. There you have it. There you have it. They are preparing. It's going down. It's starting right now. As you are hearing this, you already have Antifa packing up their bags, taking their time, dotting their I's, crossing their T's, going to Washington. You feel that stillness in the air? You feel that tension? Check this out right here. We put this up last week. The FBI is warning police of threats of extremists as we approach the 2020 elections. That was put up last week. No think? You think all the cop killings meant something? You think all the shootings, the stabbings, just to random citizens? You think that meant anything? What about this right here? 50 GOP congressmen demand DOJ investigate who was funding the far-left riots. Again, even if they take out the funding, like a grenade that's had the pin already pulled out, the damage is already done. Things are already on their way. And if you want to know who's funding it, right here, this is another article from the good folks over there at the Free Thought Project, but it's been reposted by WorldTruth.tv. It's by Eddie Levine. They put this up September 10th. The day before we found out who the real terrorists were, right here. Billionaire globalist George Soros exposed as the hidden hand behind Trump protests. He's provoking a color revolution. And we've talked about this time and time again. People have to understand when I'm breaking down to you the foreign elements, the foreign destabilization that's taking place. You got Jerry Nadler over here saying Antifa doesn't exist. You understand the sophistication, team. And I'm only going to read a little bit of this because this is last week's news. Today, this isn't even anything. We're not even getting into the arsonists that have been found in Portland setting stuff on fire. We're just trying to talk about the protests. Who's organizing this with the sophistication? Let me get into this. It says billionaire globalist financier George Soros' MoveOn.org has been revealed to be a driving force behind the organizing of nationwide protests against the election of Donald Trump, exposing the protests to be largely an organized top-down operation and not an organic movement of concerned Americans taking to the streets, as reported by mainstream media. Wednesday saw protests in the streets of at least 10 major U.S. cities: Chicago, New York, Los Angeles, Philadelphia, Boston, Washington, D.C., Portland, Oregon, St. Paul, Minneapolis, and Seattle, as well as several other cities saw a protest, according to USA Today, who loves to try to fact-check us. It says, in light of the protests and rioting that have transpired since the election of Trump, a closer analysis of the dynamic at play is warranted to gauge whether it's an organic grassroots movement or something much more organized, sophisticated, and potentially dangerous. People have to understand this. People have to understand this. That's why I'm trying to take the time to break down to you guys just a simple layout. Like it's been like a year now since this protest I'm always telling you guys about. And what did I witness there? Where they had out the strangelings at first, and then they brought out like the LGBTQP, and then they brought out like the destabilizing people. It was wave after wave after wave. It's coordinated. I even tried, we tried to infiltrate, I don't have time to go into this. We tried to do counter surveillance on our local Antifa, and they are very sophisticated. That's all I'll say. People have to understand that this is well organized and it's financed. And on top of that, even whenever it's not top down, you have people mimicking the structure. We'll have to do like something separate on this. It's very, very sophisticated. Continuing on, it says Soros' affiliated organization, MoveOn.org, released the following press release yesterday afternoon. It says Americans to come together in hundreds peaceful gatherings of solidarity, resistance, and resolve following election results. Hundreds of Americans, dozens of organizations to gather peacefully outside the White House and in cities and towns nationwide to take a continued stance against misogyny, racism, Islamophobia, and xenophobia. Tonight, thousands of Americans will come together at hundreds of peaceful gatherings in cities and towns across the nation, including outside the White House, the hashtag White House Siege, following the result of Tuesday's presidential election. The gatherings, organized by MoveOn.org and allies, will affirm a continued rejection of Donald Trump's bigotry, xenophobia, Islamophobia, and misogyny, and demonstrate our resolve to fight together for the America we still believe is possible. Within 2 hours of the call to action, MoveOn members had created more than 200 gatherings nationwide, with the number continuing to grow on Wednesday. I put this up 6 days ago. 6 days ago, and like I tell you, they are already gathering outside of the White House. They are already gathering in different parts of the nation. They've had over 100+ days to do what's going on with the George Floyd protests, with the Chaz Chop thing over there, with the roaming mobs of unemployed people trying to burn stuff down. Again, arsonists being paid to set stuff on fire. You've got to understand the sophistication of this, my friends. And the fact that you have a mockingbird media who is just deaf and unable to explain this to people shows how infiltrated we truly are. You see, do I have time to really go into how sophisticated it is? Like, we're past that, you see. And whenever you go listen to the episode that I did with Nino, you'll hear me talk about how we are ripe for any type of militaristic style attack. That's why we're having this insurgency. That's why we're having this insurrection, is because you're defunding the police, you're cucking the military. We have so much resistance going on in the country, and manipulation and misinformation. People have no idea what's going on, why it's actually taking place. We're getting to a point to where we're retarding. I'll put it to you this way, man. I didn't put it in here, but there are kids doing Benadryl, doing like a Benadryl challenge, and there are children dying. And I thought to myself at this point, because it's on TikTok, at this point, we really have to start calling that type of stuff out. They're brainwashing children. They're like the infestation of corruption and inversion of logic, to where we have people going against their best interest and the progressive interest of all is so crazy. It is just so sophisticated. You know, again, to see kids doing Benadryl challenges, Tide Pod challenges, shooting their heads off, doing strange stuff like that. You're wondering what in God's name is going on with these kids. That's one thing, right? Our generation's over here about to throw our lives away on the street because, well, it's the cool thing to do. There's nothing else for us to do. It is just so sophisticated, and it's all against our best interest. The foreign elements funding this level of destabilization and civil unrest, it's so sophisticated. I wonder why people don't ask questions. But anyway, I'm going to play this clip for you guys real quick. This is of the war on police continuing as LA deputies were ambushed in a squad car. Now, I play this, I know I'm going to have people saying I'm some boot-licking fascist, right? Some statist. It's like, no, you don't see what's happening right here. You're teaching a new form of racism, for one. You're starting some stuff up that should have been laid down, for two, and you're going to create a dangerous landscape for the future. You know, I think about Bloods and the Crips and how they're getting over their stuff, and a lot of them are joining the Nation of Islam, and there's a switch up happening. And so they have to figure out how to polarize people. That's what Antifa and BLM is. They're the new gangs. That's what I mean by them being out there doing, acting like it's Gotham, or acting like it's Batman or something. Things are changing. And so when you're sparking this stuff up, telling children to go out there and kill cops, it's just a slippery slope. But here, let's play this and then we'll continue.
The LA County Sheriff's Department has announced a $100,000 reward for the arrest of the gunman, and the shooting has already become a campaign issue. 2 Los Angeles sheriff's deputies were left fighting for their lives after being shot multiple times Saturday night. Disturbing surveillance video showed a man dressed in black walk up to the deputy's vehicle near the Compton Metro station and then fire a gun into the car before running away.
He acted as if he was going to walk past the car, and then he made a left turn directly toward the car, raised a pistol, and fired several rounds inside of the vehicle, striking both of the sheriff's deputies.
The deputies are a 31-year-old mother of a 6-year-old and a 24-year-old man who was sworn in only 14 months ago. After the shooting, demonstrators then went to the hospital and tried to block the emergency room entrance. One shouted that he hoped the deputies died.
They were saying death to the police, kill the police, and they were using all type of curse words and derogatory terms about the police.
Los Angeles Mayor Eric Garcetti told CNN there's no place in civilized society for those who wish the deputies would die.
I won't ever let a couple voices that not only are uncalled for, but it's abhorrent to say something like that when we have 2 deputies who are sheriff deputies in grave condition.
President Trump and Joe Biden both tweeted condemnations of the attack early Sunday. Then Biden tweeted again calling for a ban on assault weapons, while Trump called the shootings part of the war on the police.
The radical left in America is waging open war on law enforcement, Hundreds of officers nationwide have been injured in left-wing riots and mobs.
This takes place amid violent protests nationwide and calls for defunding of police by leftist groups, including the Black Lives Matter movement, which is openly Marxist.
Myself and Alicia in particular are trained organizers. We are trained Marxists. We are super versed on sort of ideological theories.
Meanwhile, the city manager of Linwood, outside of Compton, is facing criticism because after the shooting, he posted that the chickens have come home to roost, the quote Malcolm X used following the assassination of President Kennedy. Thankfully, both deputies are expected to recover. Dale Hurd, CBN News.
Thanks, Dale. So we're going to get into this. The chickens have come home to roost. We're going to get into this. You know, what's so interesting about that? You've got Patrisse Cullors, one of the co-founders of Black Lives Matter, admitting that she's a trained Marxist. This is one of the things I freaked out about earlier this week. This is why I took up 2 hours of your guys' time breaking down like the satanic infiltration that's taking place in society. We're about to make that switch up. When we break down what's happening spiritually to people, the psycho-spiritual configuration of humanity, that is a very, very real thing. The operating system of our allies, why there is a spirit of delusion infiltrating people. We talked about it a lot last year. Who is telling people to go out there and do these things? Who is telling these people to go out there, kill yourself, go out there, kill someone, tell somebody your God is dead, F your Jesus, America's dead, America sucks, America's never going to be great, we're coming for your kids. Who's telling people to say this like almost evil and sacrilegious stuff? I'm only going to read a little bit of this before I make like a quick pivot, because we're going to get into another report where they're talking about these extremist memes that are being shared on these networks. Okay, we are a network. We are a social media network. We are not sharing extremist memes. We are sharing information, not memes about cop killing, not memes about murdering pedophiles, not memes of castrating pedophiles, not memes of burying any of these elitists and globalists. We're trying to bring awareness and information, but that's what we do. I can't speak for what everybody else does, but here, let me read a little bit of this and then we'll switch up. This comes from Baxter Dimitri over there at News Punch. They put this up September 15th. It says BLM co-founder who admitted that she's a trained Marxist now confesses to practicing witchcraft. It says Black Lives Matter co-founder Patrisse Cullors has admitted that the movement is not about just racial and social justice, but at its core, it's a spiritual movement that involves, quote, invoking spirits with mantras and gifts until, quote, those spirits actually become present with you. So don't worry, we'll get into that here shortly. Techno sorcery, all kinds of other strange things like that. I think people, again, I said this earlier this week, I think people freak out when I say these things because they have no reference to it. They don't understand it. They don't see it. They don't understand the escalation, and they don't see like where it's going to go. I keep making references to to Batman, to Gotham City, right? Where is Arkham Asylum? Like, I'm not some jackboot, fascist, some authoritarian dude, but dude, if you're going to keep letting this type of stuff happen, they're going to intensify. You've got cities that are letting these people go in and out of jail, and they're only getting worse. Again, I didn't cover the arson that took place this week in Portland. That guy got out from jail after being arrested for arson, setting fires, and started 6 more fires. They're being enabled to do this. And so when I tell you that we're making villains, that it's turning into Gotham out there, that these are all jokers, this is the only way that I can reference this. Yes, they're thugs. Yes, these are criminals, but it goes past that. Here, check this out. We put this up September 15th. It comes from Tom Ozimek over there at the Epoch Times. It says extremist memes and calls for violence surge on far-left social media. It says that a nonprofit that studies how hate-charged messages spread across social media said in a new report that far-left groups are increasingly using memes and other online propaganda to instigate violence amongst members of the general public and police. It says a report by the Network Contagion Research Institute published on September 14th is titled Network-Enabled Anarchy, How Militant Anarcho-Socialist Networks Use Social Media to instigate widespread violence against political opponents and law enforcement. There's a PDF for it. You can download it. It found that anarcho-socialists and violent anarchists' online communities have grown in influence in recent years thanks to the widespread use of memes as propaganda spread by use of memes as propaganda spread by means of sophisticated communication networks and used to organize militia and inspire violence. The Institute found evidence that, quote, violent anarcho-socialist networks played an active online role in preparing for and coordinating real-world riots nationwide and in real time. Noting the rapid growth of an online structure supporting the anarcho-socialist extremism, the Institute found that during recent social justice protests featuring anti-police outrage and or memes and coded language spiked by more than 1,000% over Twitter and 300% on Reddit. And we figured out that Reddit is owned by China. So who again is funding this? Who again is funding this? I have to say this real quick, just to touch on this. You know, it's got nothing to do. It's got nothing to do with this. The same thing goes for the Boogaloo movement. I'm going to say this: people on the far right trying to take over the government. You got to watch who's sending you this information, who's sending you these messages. I don't know, man. I think. Let me get this out of here. I think because I'm getting older, I'm thinking about a family. I'm thinking about my kids. I'm thinking about a lot of different things now. I'm taking a step back. You know, the other day I was up visiting my family, and you know, me and my little brother were talking about some stuff. And he was talking about how some of our friends are simping over chicks not worth it. You know, can't turn a hoe into a housewife type stuff. And good men trying to simp over women that don't deserve it type thing. But, you know, I kind of thought about where that word simp is coming from and how come it's associated with men trying to be in relationships. Because you know there's a depopulation agenda going on right now. You know there's a dehumanization agenda going on right now. There's an anti-human agenda going on right now. They're trying to shut down the family. They're trying to attack the nuclear family. So when I hear the word simp come from people, I'm like, where is this coming from? China. I know that's just where my mindset goes. I understand simping over people and stuff like this, but we're at a time right now where everybody has such high standards that they get nothing done. It ties into this as well. What they're having us do, when I tell you they're having us throw our lives away by going out there in the streets, acting like we're glorified to do this, there is a dehumanization campaign going on. It's not the left or the right. It's those people radicalizing both sides. And who's doing it? Where do people receive their information? I'm not making any spicy memes. You get me? Let's get back into this. It says that extreme anarcho-socialist fringe online forums on Reddit use memes calling for the death of police and memes stockpiling ammunitions to promote violent revolution. NCRI stated noting growth in membership in such groups during recent protests over COVID-19 lockdowns and for social justice. Quote, groups such as the Socialist Riflists Association have more than doubled in membership since the quarantine, the Institute found. The report also noted evidence of, quote, innovative cyber strategies being deployed by anarchist networks, including spreading instructions for 3D printed weapons, sharing insights on using lasers to blind targets, and, quote, real-time online coordination of offline rioting and anti-police violence, such as setting fires, throwing projectiles, and using fireworks and munitions. The report features examples of memes with, quote, clear calls for violence, including an image of a member of law enforcement being shot in the head and of a photo of a burning police car with the caption, ACAB, all as crispy as bacon. Not really, it means all cops are bad. Another example featured in the report describes a post on Reddit on the R Socialist RA forum, which has a link to a 3D printable Soviet-era weapon along with a propagandistic video that features someone shooting an AKM pattern receiver with the on-screen caption, quote, sees the means of production, in reference to the Marxist call to action for violent overthrow of capitalism. The report notes, however, that the violence from the far-left political actors has, quote, not yet come as widespread as ISIS, nor does it have the death toll or historical reach that right-leaning extremism has in the U.S. Still, it found that the growing use of online propaganda tactics amplified by fringe communities carries a mounting threat of violence by what the network recalled network-enabled mobs. The report comes at a politically sensitive time when peaceful protests against police brutality have been marred by outbreaks of looting and violence. You see what's happening? They're greenlighting the chaos. People are intensifying. Now, I'm just going to say this real quick before we get into our primary one. When I tell you that we have radicals, extremists, exterminists, and all this, it's a very real thing. Right here, Satanists and witches for Biden. Like all progressive groups, the Satanic Temple came out in support of Black Lives Matter. Yeah, this is an article by Daniel Greenfield over there at Sons of Liberty Media. They put this up September 15th. It talks about how they're all coming together. They're using their scare tactics. They're assembling the Legion of Doom. That's the easiest way for me to describe it. It's almost like historic, and I think that's why we have all these different references to strange things that have happened, almost comic book level stuff, Hollywood level stuff, because it doesn't make sense. I think this is a part of the predictive programming to where people are legitimately caught off guard by the overt evil that they're seeing, and I went into detail on that this week with the Instagram Live, the externalization of the method to where they're putting it all out there. Heck yes, we're aborting babies. Heck yeah, we're causing the riots. Heck yeah, we're stealing all this. We're doing it all. And like Jerry Nadler said, no, it doesn't exist. You don't get to question it. What you're seeing is not happening. COVID 1984. This is the inversion of logic. This is the assault on normalcy. And so when I get into this article right here about the BLM founder Patrisse Cullors admitting that she practices witchcraft, this should let you know everything you need to. We've covered the witches that bind Trump. We've covered the occultists. We've covered the Luciferians. We've covered the Satanic Temple. We've covered all of it. I'll put the hashtag occult world. I played a couple clips for you guys earlier this week on Instagram Live to really show you that this is not a joke. That when they're doing this, they're saying, you know what, we can improve and refine our magic by externalizing it. We can embolden ourselves and make our ranks stronger by putting it out there, by casting the rituals. You guys remember Marina Abramovich, right? Spirit cooking witch, and how all that came out there? And now you got Lady Gaga admitting that that's her mentor. You've got to understand, it's a big club and we are not in it. They are practicing this stuff in private and in public now. They are consecrating certain grounds with demonic sigils. They are doing the dark working. They have something working through them. They worship a dark god. I'm going to get back into this article that we were reading earlier from News Punch. It's by Baxter Dimitri. It says spirits are invoked by repeating mantras, including the say his name refrain, pouring libation for the spirits and presenting them with gifts like honey and tobacco, things like that, until they manifest themselves and work through her, admits the BLM co-founder. Now, how much have we talked about, again, psychedelics? We've talked about the psychedelic aspect of people opening the portal. People invoking the spirits, coming up with their own types of magic, right? That hybrid spirituality. You've really got to understand. That's, again, what I'm saying. I can only equate a lot of the things that are happening to things that I've seen like in movies, cartoons, and TV shows. I know that's childish of me, but I have like no other reference. Find me another time in period or another time in history where you have like Satanists teaming up like with anarchists, teaming up with like politicians, and teaming up with like corporate heads. Find me like another time where you've seen like another Legion of Doom similar to this, and I'll refer to that. Because right now, this is it. This is the only time that I've ever seen this type of like monumental and organized chaos. It says BLM is not just an attack on freedom, property, statues of great Americans, history, and Western civilization. We now know that it is a dark spiritual movement and an attack against Christianity and God. In a recorded conversation with Colors, BLM Los Angeles founder and California State University professor of African Studies, Melinda Abdullah, apparently shared more than she thought she would have. Quote, maybe I'm sharing too much, but we've become very intimate with the spirits that we call on regularly, she explained. Each one of them seems to have a different presence and personality, you know. I laugh a lot with Waukesha, you know, and I didn't meet her in the body. I met her through this work. Colors echoes the sentiments of Abdullah. Quote, it's a very important practice. Hashtags are for us more than a hashtag. It is literally almost resurrecting a spirit so that they can work through us to get the work that we need to get done, said Colors, one of the 3 co-founders of BLM. Quote, I started to feel personally connected and responsible and accountable to them, both from a deeply political place, but also from a deeply spiritual place. Quote, always, you know, in the tradition, you offer things that you love, that your loved one who passed away would want. You know, whether it's like honey or tobacco, things like that. The trained Marxist and BLM co-founder continued, quote, and that's so important, not just for us to be in direct relationship to our people who have passed, but also for them to know we've remembered them. I believe so many of them work through us. Colors also admits that the very first thing BLM leaders do when they hear of a murder is pray to the spirits and pour libation. Again, she emphasized that it is not just about racial and social justice. At its core, it's a spiritual movement, she continued. You just can't pretend that like that work is just organizing work. That's some serious stuff. The whole say his name mantra also has deep spiritual significance according to Colors. When we say the names, we speak their names. We say her name, say their names. We do that all the time. You kind of invoke that spirit, and then those spirits actually become present with you, she explained, revealing something that virtually none of the useful idiots attending BLM rallies understand. Quote, spirituality is at the center of Black Lives Matter, and I think that not just for us, I feel like so many leaders and so many organizers are deeply engaged in a pretty important spiritual practice. Colors continued that, quote, I don't think I could do this work without that. I don't think I could do it as long as I've done it and as consistently. I feel like it's like if I didn't do that, it would be anti-ethical to this work. So how many times have I got up over here and talked about my spirituality, how much it's helped me, what I'm going through, and more. How it's emboldened me to make even bigger decisions, to step through it. This is only one. This is really only one. I think what I'm going to have to do is come back to this because this is so monumental to me personally. This deserves like its own occult world episode because you're talking about techno-sorcery, you're talking about occultism, you're talking about resurrecting of the spirits, you're talking about mass manipulation, okay? And I talked about this again whenever I first started seeing witches use social media to organize, man. You got to think, who's organizing these rituals? Who's organizing these protests? There are people being energized off of this. This is necromancy. This is evil. And I don't mean to yell at you, but I don't have any other way to reference it or to frame it. And so this is the execution of the siege. As I say this to you, the BLM, like I said, the BLM founder, Patrice Cullors, is admitting that no, they practice witchcraft. You've got them over there preparing to seize the White House like this is the medieval century or something, my friends. Like, good Lord, what happened to the rule of law? They can't arrest all those people. What is going to happen? So while you have people literally saying Hail Marys and prayers, going to sleep, you have people hexing fascists, coming after the president, coming after the country, putting curses upon the ground. That's a big thing as well. You got to think about this. They understand that they're going to be destroyed, and so they'll try to burn down everything they can, leaving a curse upon the land that we have to deal with generationally, multi-generationally. I said this too when I was with Nino. Every single inch that Antifa takes, it's going to take at least twice as long to get that freedom back. That's politically speaking. I'm talking about the spiritual, moral compass of the country and how far down the rat hole we are. This is not good. But some people say that this adversary is what's waking the sleeping giant. Because there's no way that we can sit here and just casually keep going over all this stuff, acting like everything's hunky-dory. No, sir. And we won't be. Because I tell you, people are fighting back and people are waking up. But speaking of waking up, we got Australia waking up to all the authoritarian things that are taking place. We're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, we're going to be getting into COVID-19, the second wave fears. Dr. Anthony Fauci, who's a rat, talking about hunkering down over the winter. Bill Gates slamming the FDA and saying people that talk about his vaccine conspiracy theories, they're nuts. What? You've also got a federal judge ruling that the Pennsylvania government, or the governor, COVID-19 restrictions are illegal. You have that and more on the other side. Ladies and gentlemen, don't go anywhere. This is Freedom Faction over here on Factions of Freedom. And we'll be right back right after this.
The radical left has
understand what's going on around you. You are in a state of war, and you have precious little time to save yourself. It's a slow process which we call active measures. The first stage being demoralization. It takes from 15 to 20 years to demoralize a nation. The next stage is destabilization. What matters is essentials: economy, foreign relations, defense systems. The next stage is crisis, with a violent change of power, structure, and economy, period of normalization. This is what will happen in the United States if you allow all these schmucks to put a big brother government in Washington, D.C., who will promise lots of things, never mind whether the promises are fulfilled or not. The time bomb is ticking. With every second, the disaster is coming closer and closer. The danger is real.
Your distance.
While they're deceiving me, it cuts my immunity. TV's got control of me. I turn it on, they say.
But this is not over yet.
Don't trust the man with the orange skin, oh no.
It comes from China. There has to be some form of punishment.
Don't mess around with the CDC numbers.
Solution, which is a year to 2 years off, is the vaccine.
I wear my face mask in my house so I can stop a symptomatic disease spread to myself. And I wear my face mask when I bike so I
it doesn't seem, we're back, by the way, it doesn't seem real. Some of what we're talking about, Satanists and witches for Trump or for Biden, witches casting spells on people routinely, like every month. The one of the co-founders of one of the most largest racially organized movements, she's practicing witchcraft. Multiple different radical groups preparing to lay siege on the White House. It doesn't sound real, does it? It's like, this is it doesn't sound real. It really doesn't. And I think that's part of the tactic, is overwhelming things so that people kind of feel paralyzed by any action. I had this statement just last week with you guys. Truth has no sides, but actions have consequences. And I say that because you have a lot of people that can judge things after the fact, but how are they going to act whenever it's their turn? How are you going to act whenever you're confronted with these truths? Yeah, this stuff is evil. What are you going to do? That's why I'm like, I'm not a bootlicking authoritarian fascist, but I'm also saying that we need to do something about all this chaos that's going on. We have a rule of law and order, things that should be maintained and well kept. And I think everybody can see this polarization is really, really hitting a tipping point. And whenever that happens, it's going to be overwhelmed. I think that's against Saul Alinsky's rules for radicals. It's going to be overwhelmed. We're not going to know what to do, and it's going to collapse. And that's what we're all trying to stave off. This is very dangerous. So no, I'm not calling for it, but I'm at the same time saying it cannot be allowed to continue. And so I know it doesn't sound real. A lot of this doesn't sound real. Does COVID-19 sound real? Why do we have to live with that? This is what I'm trying to talk to you guys about. We're dealing with so many different things that, to a degree, people are putting their heads in the sands. I can't blame them. But this is not the time to tune off. This is not the time to turn down. This is the time to get politically activated, get spiritually motivated, get right with God, man. Because I'm telling you, there is some stuff coming down the pipeline, and I myself am trying to prepare for it, and all I'm trying to do is help you prepare for it. And by January of next year, things are going to be so different. Things are going to be so different. That siege that's happening right now at the White House, it's not going to end on November 3rd. The effects are going to be felt, like they said, for the next 11 weeks after that. The economic effects of COVID-19 are still being felt today. It is so crazy where we are, ladies and gentlemen. But like I said, thank you for tuning in to this powerful edition of Factions of Freedom. I'm glad to be here in this capacity in your guys' life talking about this stuff. It doesn't sound real. Again, if I were to tell you some of the stuff that's going on in my private life, it would sound like it's out of a movie or like I'm bragging or boasting, but I'm not. I'm just trying to get here and give my 2 hours to this mission every single week. But here, let's get into this. Let's start this segment. The second wave fears. It's exactly what it sounds like. Just last week, we played for you guys clips of authoritarian Australia mates being detained in their own house, being visited by secret police and all this other nonsense. This week, we've got an Australian woman being dragged from her car by 4 policemen at a lockdown checkpoint. That's right. They say Victoria Police say that they plan to charge a Melbourne woman with assaulting police after she posted a video of her arrest to social media showing her being dragged from a car by police officers.
You're going to state your name and address to me.
Can you please get your hands off?
No. Can you step out of the car, please?
No.
Excuse me.
Well, because I have a car charger on my car. They sell them everywhere. They sell them at petrol stations.
That's not the problem anymore. The problem is you're not stating your name to me.
Just because I have a car charger.
Can you get out of the car, please?
No, I don't feel safe. You're armed.
You're safe, don't you worry about
that. No, I don't feel safe. You're attempting to get into my vehicle. What are you doing? Why? Excuse me, you're not practicing. What the fuck are you doing? What the fuck are you doing? Get off me! Get off me!
You've got anxiety, right? Relax, you're sick! You're actually sick, relax! Hey! Relax! Relax! going to start.
Police arrested 29-year-old Natalie Bonner after she allegedly refused to provide her details and the driver's license at a checkpoint in Calcalo just before him on Saturday. It says Miss Bonner was stopped at the checkpoint because her mobile phone was mounted on a charger on her windscreen. Things escalated when she refused to get out of the car and also refused to provide her name to the officer. The video shows the police officer reaching into the vehicle and undoing her seatbelt. Miss Bonner claimed on social media that police called for backup and 4 officers grabbed her by the legs and pulled her from the car. The video that wasn't attached to this is her actually outside of the vehicle on the grass on the lawn, detained with multiple officers standing around her. It reminds me of whenever I got pulled over in a Prius. Continuing on, it says, quote, "While trying to cuff me, they had their knees in my back and I couldn't breathe," Miss Bonner said. It says in the video, there is a man in the passenger seat who could be heard yelling that Miss Bonner is sick. Victoria Police said in a statement that an officer spoke to Miss Bonner when she was first stopped, explaining that her mobile phone was obstructing her view due to its position on the windscreen, and that this was an offense. Quote, "The woman refused to remove her phone from the windscreen," Victoria Police said in a statement. Yeah, so because she refused to remove her mounted phone screen, they're like, you know what? That's it. Get out of the car. Get out of the car. You see, because it's not about a virus. Where's your social distance? Keep your mask. Keep your distance. It's not about that. What it's about is submission. It's about compliance. It's about obedience. Obedience to the authoritarian gods, to the draconian laws, to this lockdown. You see, it's like that movie Ants. When one stands up, they all stand up. But see, good on Miss Bonner for putting that out there. Good on her for, again, exposing some of the criminality that's going on out there. Like we reported just last week with you guys. It took over 80 people. It only took 80 people to spark a revolution in Australia. It took only 80 people getting visited by the cops to spark a revolution. Think about this. I would say hold. It says Australians chant freedom as the market is shut down by COVID riot cops. This is a remarkable video out of Australia. Shows people chanting freedom as a food market is forcefully shut down by COVID riot cops. This is the clip shows dozens of police on horseback and armed with riot gear facing off against market sellers and customers. Chants of freedom, freedom, then breaks out as one of the officers directs the riot police to move in. Cops armed with shields then began charging and pushing people away while one is singled out and dragged away by officers. It says that the state of Victoria has enforced one of the most draconian coronavirus lockdowns in the developed world, with authorities giving themselves the powers to enter homes without a warrant and also seize people's children. It says, as we highlighted earlier this month, a pregnant woman was arrested in her home in front of her own kids for the crime of posting about the protest on Facebook. Police in Melbourne also announced that they would be using surveillance drones to catch people who don't wear masks and to keep track of the cars that travel further than 5 kilometers from home. Journalist Avi Yamini was also dragged to the ground and arrested for merely covering an anti-lockdown protest in Melbourne. Numerous videos have also emerged of people being forcibly arrested by police for not wearing masks. So Australia is fighting back. Australia is fighting back against COVID-19, yet America is over here being terrorized by baristas. You've got Australians literally trying to gather up the courage to fight back against a global infection and Americans can't even get out of their house. You see how crazy this is? You see how crazy the world is becoming. And if we don't begin to fight back, more of the same type of authoritarianism is going to happen here. Like they said, you can protest, you can do this type of stuff, but if you obey the law, well, you have to obey the law. Like this Democratic mayor out there in, Houston is talking about right here. Democratic mayor launches study that will collect blood samples from randomly selected Houston homes. This is an article written by Paul Joseph Watson over there at Summit.news. They put this up September 16th, and it says Democratic Mayor Sylvester Turner has signed off on a new study that will see city employees visit randomly selected homes in Houston to collect blood samples for COVID-19 antibody testing. It says the study is being conducted by the Houston Health Department in collaboration with the CDC. Household members will be asked to answer a survey and give a blood sample. For some households, all members of the household will be asked to participate. Authorities say that the tests are necessary to develop a deeper insight into how COVID-19 spreads through the community and how many people were previously infected with the virus. The mayor said that the program would be voluntary but urged citizens to take part. Quote, "If we knock on your door, I strongly encourage you and your loved ones to participate in this important survey," said Turner. Quote, "The data you provide by participating will help inform strategies to mitigate the effects of COVID-19. In some other countries, such as New Zealand, people who refuse to take a COVID-19 test have been forcibly removed to quarantine facilities by health authorities. In previous interview, Turner had suggested that people who refused to take her coronavirus test were, quote, irresponsible. Last month, Turner also announced that police will begin issuing citations against people not wearing masks, hitting them with a fine of $250. It took 80 people to spark that fight out there in Australia. God knows what we're going to do. Lord knows what we're going to do. Lord knows what we're going to do. I don't mean to yell, but you got to think, ladies and gentlemen, you've got Bill Gates saying, don't take the vaccine. You got Donald Trump saying, don't take the vaccine. You got the CDC, the CDC directors, Robert Redfield, saying, hey, don't take the vaccine. Well, I don't think I should trust any of you, and I'm not going to take the vaccine anyhow. But what's going on here is like a stalemate, and you're all trying to poison and kill everybody. I never trusted this in the first place. But see, we're not even reacting. We're not even fighting back against it. You see, we've been confronted with something so foreign that we're beginning to fight against ourselves. But to continue on talking about this, let me bring your guys' attention to this other article. It says federal judge rules that the Pennsylvania governor's COVID-19 restrictions is unconstitutional. That's right. I have a quick clip for you guys. It says that exposed in his own tyranny, Pennsylvania Governor Wolf whines like a pre-adolescent brat. Quote, but all the other governors are doing it. The fact is, all the other governors should immediately rescind all their unconstitutional mandates and restore our civil liberties. Like Carlos Zapata said, that veteran and business owner out there in California, take the mask off. You're hurting the businesses, you're hurting the country. We're only going to be civil for so much longer. Restore our freedoms or expect resistance.
Involving the restrictions put in place by Pennsylvania's governor during the pandemic.
Yeah, just a few hours ago, a federal judge ruled that the policy which limited gatherings, ordered people to stay at home, and closed many businesses was unconstitutional.
For more on the decision, we turn to Action News reporter Annie McCormick. She's live in Old City with much more. Annie.
Well, Jeanette and Brian, as we speak, lawyers for lawmakers on both sides are currently right now reviewing this 66-page opinion. There's still a lot of questions about what impact this ruling will have. We did reach out to Governor Tom Wolf's office. A spokesperson said the administration is disappointed with the result. They will seek a stay of the decision and also an appeal. U.S. District Judge William S. Stickman IV handing down a 66-page opinion today, calling several of Governor Tom Wolf's orders initiated by the pandemic unconstitutional. Judge Stickman, appointed by President Trump in 2019, says specifically at issue are the restrictions of gatherings, orders closing non-life-sustaining businesses, and directing Pennsylvanians to stay at home. In the opinion, the judge says the governor and Secretary of Health Rachel Levine acted with good intentions, but violated First and 14th Amendment rights. Quote, good intentions toward a laudable end are not enough to uphold governmental action against a constitutional challenge. The suit was brought by owners of several Western Pennsylvania businesses, including owners of hair salons, drive-in movie theaters, a farmer's market vendor, a horse trainer, plus several Republican office holders. While most businesses have reopened since June and a stay-at-home order is lifted, many that remain closed at a certain capacity wonder what this means. But a footnote in the ruling says capacity limits are still in place, so are wearing masks inside businesses. The ruling also calls into question how the state deemed what businesses constituted as life-sustaining. Pennsylvania Speaker of the House Brian Cutler and House Majority Leader Kerry Benninghoff released this statement reading, quote, for the millions of unemployed Pennsylvanians, the thousands of small business owners that have seen their livelihoods permanently ended, and all those looking for some relief from these unilaterally imposed, inconsistent, and contradictory shutdown orders, this opinion offers some form of hope that a return to normalcy might be on the horizon. And a spokesperson for the House Majority Leader also added today they're still reviewing this, but they do believe because of the ruling, large gatherings are now unenforceable. Also, they're reviewing if businesses are exempt from paying fines if they opened against the governor's orders. Now, reporting.
Thank you, Susan. I don't know if that's her name, but that's
involving the
that's what I'm going to call her. But there you have it. There's some fight back. Not on not like on a massive scale like what we would expect, but there is some fight back. You know, another example of this fighting back, which is good. You know, I think this is again more evidence of us like learning our tools, learning how to fight back, learning how to get organized, learning how to collectively overcome this adversary. Another good example, or this adversity, is this. California County votes to end COVID state of emergency. I don't want to say that the New Agers and the QAnon folk were right, you know, when they're talking about how COVID-19 is good for us. It teaches us to become a global community. Again, this is some like Luciferian style stuff because you're saying, hey, no, we need to get attacked so that we can overcome it. It's very dangerous. But what I'm trying to say is, with this is we're learning the skills at our disposal. We're learning what we can do. We're learning how much we can and how much we will take. I don't think people understood how precious their freedoms were until they had them taken. And so when I'm saying we're learning our skills, we're learning our weapons, we're learning what we can do to fight this, this is, again, another perfect example of it. Organizing. There's a clip that I didn't get around to posting of a father being removed from a school board meeting. And I don't think he was wearing his mask. I think it was over something trivial. But how many people does that represent? How many other fathers have been in the same situation, speaking up for everybody else's rights? And that's what this is. We're having to step up, understand our power, and reclaim it instead of the system take it from us. But here, let's get into this article. We put this up September 15th. September 15th. It's from Waking Times. It says that the Placer County California Board of Supervisors recently declared that they are no longer considering the COVID-19 pandemic to be a state of emergency requiring the most restrictive government mandate lockdowns. Quote, our case numbers are so low it doesn't warrant a shutdown, said Placer County Board Chairwoman Bonnie Gore. Placer County, located in the Sacramento area, has acquired a running tally of 3,325 COVID-19 cases since February, with a total of exactly 39 deaths. The United States Census Bureau counted the Placer population at 398,000 as of July 1st, 2019, placing the overall infection rate around 0.008%. Quote, we will continue to encourage our residents and businesses to take precautions, but our businesses and community will continue to suffer if we cannot allow them to reopen as much as possible, said Gore. This move downgrades Placer County's perceived risk level from, quote, widespread to substantial, allowing restaurants to open indoor dining at 25% capacity and schools to reopen for all grades as they choose. Quote, we have reiterated from the beginning that there would not be a one-size-fits-all solution, said Placer County Office of Education spokeswoman Michelle Eklund. Quote, each school district has unique challenges, students need, and capacity. Our goal is to support districts in safely reopening and staying open. The World Health Organization believes that it is safe to reopen in areas with a testing positivity rate of less than 5%, positioning Placer County just under the mark of 4.5% as of August 29th. However, the move to end the most restrictive lockdown orders spurred Public Health Officer Dr. Amy Sazen to resign and protest. It says, quote, today's action by the Placer County Board of Supervisors made it clear that I can no longer effectively serve in my role as Placer County Health Officer and Public Health Director. Yeah, people don't want to be locked down. The masks are killing the economy. Can you blame them? People don't want the masks. They don't want to deal with it. It's not healthy. You're asking a lot of people to basically give up their livelihoods. You're asking so many things. That's what the mask really does represent in so many different ways. And I know there's a lot of people who are having this conflict. And you can say, oh, I don't wear the mask. Oh, I don't do this. Everybody's having to do the chicken dance in one way, shape, form, or another. This is why we have to create this narrative of not having a mask outside of the medical exemption nonsense and push back against it. Again, there's another video out today that we didn't get around to posting of a mob of protesters, of people saying, hey, take off your mask. I think they're like in a Target or something. And people are trying to act like this is some monumental thing, like it was a protest. It could have just been a gang of kids out there saying, hey, take off your mask, doing a bunch of random stuff. Does that have to be a protest? Is that how easy it is? You get what I'm saying? But the point is this, people are trying to fight back to all this tyranny. Another example of it is this right here. Check this out, some more silliness for you. Bill Gates says that COVID conspiracies are crazy. They're so crazy. You know, as he's pushing like his global vaccination campaign. They're so crazy. Let's take a listen.
The Gates Foundation has documented the economic catastrophe that COVID-19 has produced. Bill, what if the recovery out of this catastrophe is K-shaped, which is to say one half of industry and society emerging from the pandemic strong and possibly stronger than before, and the other half weaker and falling further behind?
Well, as long as the disease is out there, things like tourism, restaurants, a lot of small businesses will be disproportionately affected, whereas office workers, where the virtual connections has actually meant that their loss of productivity is actually quite modest, they'll continue to have their job and be able to be fairly productive. And so the inequity of this, whether it's between citizens in the country, blue collar versus white collar, blacks experiencing a higher sickness rate than others. Poor countries can't borrow money and spend money like the U.S. and other rich countries have. So almost every dimension of inequity has been accentuated here. And that just takes us back to, we've got to bring this thing to a close. And then you can have the tourism and the travel and the sports and the variety of things, get back to where we were before this.
The conspiracy theorists who believe that you helped to create and spread the coronavirus might be easy to dismiss if there weren't so many of them. Has that notoriety become an impediment to your efforts or the foundation's work yet?
Well, it's so crazy, to suggest the opposite, which is, we make vaccines and that and save millions of lives, to somehow say that the vaccine in general is malign, or that the deaths aren't really taking place. It's surprising to me how interesting that is. So it spreads far more quickly than the truth. The big concern is that if that means that the protection of others, like wearing masks, or a willingness of enough people to take the vaccine, then it absolutely does make things worse. And the idea of how should these social media platforms try and avoid being the source of these sort of weirdly interesting falsehoods, that's a debate or discussion we're gonna have to continue to have.
The Gates Foundation has documented the economic catastrophe that COVID-19 has produced. Bill, what if the recovery out of this catastrophe is K-shaped, which is to say one half of industry and society...
It's K-shaped. He sounds like a robot. Not Bill Gates, or not the reporter, but Bill Gates every time he speaks. But there you have it. These conspiracy theories of Bill Gates doing this type of nonsense, it's so funny. It's just so silly. There's no way that type of stuff would happen. I wouldn't step down from Microsoft to update the population. That's funny, since we're talking about Australia and Melbourne, there is an artist out there, Lush Sucks. I followed him before. Him, Beeple Crap, and a few other people. Marks of the Beast, Forbidden Clothes, Hidden Knowledge Clothing. There's a lot of different people out there who are using conscious art as a way to expose these people. But right here, huge anti-Bill Gates mural appears in Melbourne as crowds chant, "Arrest Bill Gates," at protest. It was written by Baxter Dimitri over there, News Punch. He put this up September 16th. It says that a huge street art mural depicting a smiling Bill Gates holding a syringe and saying, quote, "Time to install your update," has appeared in Melbourne, Australia, as the nation continues to revolt against harsh censorship, wall-to-wall surveillance, the digitalization of currency, and rigid social controls, including oppressive lockdowns. The mural was signed by Lush Sucks, an anonymous resistance artist known for trolling powerful figures. Meanwhile, growing protests in Australia's cities continue to demand Bill Gates face charges of crimes against humanity. Arrest Bill Gates. They're going to arrest him. I don't think so, but you get where I'm coming from. The idea is the word is getting out. The idea is that people are beginning to wake up. Waking up to the tyranny, waking up to the enslavement. What other better way to explain it than this right here? Major case filed against governor and the state of Ohio for restricting freedom without legitimate justification. That's right. People are waking up not only to Bill Gates, to the COVID-19 lockdowns, but the injustice that's taking place. This is put together by Activist Post. They put this up September 14th. It says Ohio attorney Tom Renz, on behalf of the plaintiffs, has filed a case against the state of Ohio and Governor Mike DeWine. Renz is asking for a jury trial. This case, in the current climate, should provoke intense interest from the public and every lawyer within the hailing distance. Here is the impressive opening salvo in the court filing. It says, in recent months, entire states have been imprisoned without due process and with the clear threat to impose such lockdowns again. Interstate travel has been severely restricted, privacy rights have been devastated, numerous businesses taking without compensations, and many regulations being implemented and without statutory process requirements under the guise of a health emergency that is roughly as dangerous as the seasonal influenza outbreak. The plaintiffs in this case have all been injured in various capacities by these unconstitutional actions, and without action by the court will be left without redress. More terrifying, without action by the court will be setting future precedent that will allow states to withhold fundamental constitutional rights in violation of U.S. Supreme Court precedent. circumventing the various levels of scrutiny applied to such rights and justify such actions under public health emergency orders without subjecting those orders to any real review. Just trust the bureaucrats because they are the experts. Here's the most important point. It says, we humbly ask the court in this case to recognize that the political process of operative orders are invalid if based on false or misleading information, and recognize the criticality that all future emergency orders be based and maintained on clear, honest facts, particularly when such orders are infringing on constitutional rights. In other words, a declared state of emergency cannot stand on the mere basis of arbitrary edict. Facts matter. Actual science matters. Reasons why an emergency declared matter. The people of Ohio are fighting back. And that's important that people understand this, because just last week we were talking about the Department of Health creating like sheltering facilities, FEMA facilities for the people there. So no, people don't want to be taken to these detainment facilities. No, people don't want to have their rights trampled upon. They want to expose these people. They're being exposed. The injustice is being exposed. They want their freedoms back. They want their rights back. This adversity, this COVID-19 infection, some people aren't taking it standing down. Thank God. Thank God we have people fighting back. Thank God we just don't have armchair researchers who say, oh, this is 3D, 4D chess, bro. Like, trust the plan. No, don't trust the plan. No. No, we should not trust the plan. We need to fight back at every level. Right here, Robert F. Kennedy Jr. warns that Anthony Fauci is a fraud, and he has poisoned an entire generation of Americans. And we don't mean with vaccines, even though he's behind the AIDS scandal. There's information that he's worked with Wuhan Biolab and all this other stuff, that he's poisoned the minds of people. He's poisoned the mind of an entire generation. This type of stuff has to be brought to light so that people are aware of this. Ironically enough, this got a lot of traffic right now. It has over 11,000 likes. We put this up September 15th. It's from worldtruth.tv, and it says, during a recent episode of the Thomas Paine podcast, Robert F. Kennedy blew the lid on Dr. Anthony Fauci's extensive legacy of fraud and cover-ups throughout his lengthy medical career in the federal government. It says, Kennedy explained that Fauci has been a problematic character all throughout his more than 50-year tenure in public health, during which he has operated as a workplace tyrant and ruined the careers of countless physicians and researchers who, unlike himself, were upstanding and honorable individuals. Now they have Fauci coming out saying that vitamin D is good for you. It's like, wow. So all that stuff we were talking about vitamin C being good for you, vitamin D being good for you, get you some sunlight, UV treatments, like this is good, IV treatments, like, ugh. We had doctors being SWAT teamed for prescribing like casual vitamins to people. And now you have this guy coming out after the fact, not thinking, hey, maybe I should promote getting your immune system together. The vaccine is not the solution. Building your immune system is. Herd immunity is one thing, but why are we not talking about overall nutrition? Poison them. Poison them. It says Fauci has been with the National Institute of Allergy and Infectious Disease since 1984. Can you say deep state? And he's known among those on the inside as the guy who's, quote, poisoned an entire generation of Americans, according to Kennedy. In at least one instant, Fauci targeted a whistleblower who was trying to expose the fact that America's blood supply is tainted with deadly disease strains. Fauci ruined the career of this physician and proceeded to cover up his crucial research on the subject. Kennedy also warned during the program that Fauci has attacked many of the other good guys who've tried to serve the public rather than be shills for Big Pharma, Bill Gates, the mainstream media, and other deep state assets. You guys can go see the entire Thomas Paine podcast episode. It's attached to the episode link. You can check it out. But this is people being aware of what's going on, aware of the corruption that's going on out there. I mean, good Lord. He's got ties to Wuhan. He works for Bill Gates. Why in God's name would we want to trust him? We have more evidence that the vaccine is going to be ineffective outside of somebody like Fauci telling us. Why do we listen to him? You're arresting doctors, you're censoring them, you're deplatforming them, you're SWAT teaming them, you're taking away their funding. But we should listen to Fauci, who doesn't even abide by the very own standards that he applies to us? No way. And now, check this out. We talked about it just the other day, just last week with you guys. The trials that were taking place, I think, with AstraZeneca. They had they stopped trials because somebody had spinal tap issues. But don't worry, they're continuing the trials in South Africa. This is an article put out there by Signs of the Time. They put this up September 15th. And it says, AstraZeneca COVID-19 vaccine trial suspended in the U.S. for at least several more days amid concerns over serious complications. It says that the experimental vaccine is drawing scrutiny after participants in the clinical trial were diagnosed with transverse myelitis, an inflammatory syndrome. The U.S. clinical trials of AstraZeneca's COVID-19 vaccine will be suspended for the next several days as the U.S. FDA investigates a potential side effect, according to Reuters. It says sources told the news agency on Monday that enrollment in the trial was not being reopened until at least midweek, pending the investigation. The FDA did not immediately respond to a request for comment. It says that the British-Swedish pharmaceutical company's clinical trial was suspended last week after one volunteer was hospitalized and reportedly diagnosed with transverse myelitis, which causes inflammation in the spinal cord and is associated with viral infections. It's just like, and you want to shoot people up with this, like live attenuated versions of this? It's going to go away without it. And was this a bioweapons attack? You see, because if this was a deliberate attack, we would have to go to war. The fact that they're not talking about this and allowing for companies to get involved and, get the government involved too, then they can get that money. And then they can act like they can care. Realize this is the same health organization, the same governmental structure telling you that there is more than two genders and they're polluting the water supply. So when you have these type of evil geniuses trying to figure out ways to not only poison you, but provide a pathway for you to pay for the treatments, this is the sophistication that we have to be aware of. It says Oxford University's AstraZeneca partner on the vaccine has already resumed its clinical trial in Britain, saying in a statement that adverse reactions were an, quote, expected part of the large trial, the BBC reported. The late-stage trial involves around 30,000 participants in the U.S., U.K., Brazil, and South Africa. In the U.S., regulators are more hesitant to resume the trial, with the government-funded National Institutes of Health having now launched an investigation on its own. Kaiser Health News reported on Monday. Quote, the highest levels of NIH are very concerned. Dr. Avindra Nath, the leader of the viral research at the NIH's Institute of Neurological Disorders and Stroke, told the news outlet, quote, the last thing you want to do is hurt healthy people. Meanwhile, in South Africa, AstraZeneca, for some reason, is going ahead with the vaccine trials, knowing full well the potential harm that this could cause. AstraZeneca has resumed COVID-19 vaccine trials in South Africa more than a week after the tests were placed on hold due to a serious side effect in the participants in Britain. An official at the county's Department of Health told Reuters on Tuesday. Yeah, of course they're going to go ahead with it. They need those trials. And your life is the perfect thing to test. I know this sounds crazy, but just last week we talked about it, that the polio outbreak that's going on in Africa was caused by Bill Gates' vaccine. So if they're trying COVID-19, if you see outbreaks of COVID-19 in South Africa, just realize it's because of these things. It's a real thing. It's just dangerous. All of this is dangerous. You know, taking people's blood, disappearing people, doing all this stuff is just beyond me. Because we're not on that same operating level. We're not crazy like these people trying to take your life, take your money, and trying to slow kill you over time. I have no need to do that. Right here, Bill Gates slams FDA, doubts the agency can be trusted with the COVID-19 vaccine. So this is just more of that political kabuki theater, is what that is. Just more of that. Oh, Gates doesn't trust the FDA. Oh, Trump doesn't trust Gates. I don't trust any of you. My body, my right, my choice. I'm not going to let anybody mandate anything. This is what happens when nobody's on the same page and whenever we're all at each other's throats. This is what happens whenever we're not thinking clearly. And this is what happens whenever you have misinformation, fake news, corruption, systemic resistance to leading towards degeneration. Nobody has any idea what's going on. That's why the vaccine is such a shady topic. It was like one beforehand, but now it's like now it's on steroids. But if you want my honest to God opinion, that right there tells you everything you need to know and why we need to stay away from this entirely. We need to get religious exemptions back. I think Kamala Harris is actually trying to push for that, trying to remove people's religious exemptions for vaccines. So this is dangerous. Government mandated health care, vaccine trials that cause spinal inflammation, man-made viruses. I mean, my God, I think that's what we're going to play right here for you guys next, instead of Dr. Anthony Fauci talking about hunkering down for the second wave fears. My God, I think we need to talk about this Chinese virologist that came out early this week saying that China made the virus and then they turned it loose. I'll show you guys real quick how this works. You can look at this and I'll describe it for our audio listeners. I am currently fact-checked on a single post by 3 organizations, factcheck.org as well as USA Today. They are saying that coronavirus was not man-made or engineered, but its origins remain unclear. The quick video I'm going to play for you guys is the testimony of the Chinese virologist, Dr. Li Mengyan, who states that China has made the COVID-19 virus and intentionally released it to cause harm to the rest of the world. Now, they're already telling you this is false. I don't think we'll play it in its entirety, but I do think we should have it on record. This does come from Tucker Carlson over there at Fox News. Take it with a grain of salt. Here we go.
Again right now. Li Mengyan is the virologist who says she has evidence about where this pandemic actually came from. We're happy to have her on tonight. Doctor, thanks so much for coming on.
Hi, Tucker. Thank you.
Thank you. I know that you've published some of your research. You're planning on publishing more soon. Give us, for a non-scientific audience, a summary of why you believe this virus came from a lab in Wuhan, please.
Okay, briefly, from my first report, I can present the solid scientific evidence to our audience that this virus, COVID-19 SARS-CoV-2 virus, actually is not from nature. It is a man-made virus created in the lab based on the China military discovered and owned the very unique bat coronavirus, which cannot affect people, but after the modification becomes a very harmful virus at now. So I have evidence to show why they can do it, what they have done. How did they do it?
So what you're saying is much more sinister even than we've suggested on this show, than Tom Cotton, so than almost anyone suggested. You're saying that the Chinese government manufactured this virus, if I'm hearing you correctly. That's what you're saying?
Yes, exactly. Based on the virus genome, it's basically like our fingerprint. So you can see the very unusual characters in their genome, which clearly, based on the other evidence they left during the modification, we can see finally this is exactly the one come from their own special bat coronavirus and then target human.
What you're alleging is shocking, more even than I anticipated when we invited you on. So I just want to ask the most obvious question, which is this genome presumably is in the possession of many researchers around the world. Why is nobody saying this if it's true?
Yeah, why there is nobody wants to say it is because of the big suppression come from the Chinese Communist Party government and also their friend in scientific world. So basically, this is very clearly that this virus is like Frankenstein. So he created those things like basically a cow has deer's head, has rabbit's ear, and also have monkey's hand. So they can get it from the nature. And there were evidence left in the genome. But the scientific world also keeps silence, work together with Chinese Communist Party. They don't want people to know this truth. Also, that's why I get suspended, I get suppression, I am the target that Chinese Communist Party want be disappeared.
You're a brave person. I'm giving the benefit of the doubt and assuming you're not an anti-Chinese racist, so it's not clear why Twitter would shut you down or why you're being ignored by the rest of the U.S. media. Let me ask you a couple of questions. Why would the Chinese government intentionally create a virus like this?
Okay, if you want to know the exact motive, the exact idea, I think people have to come to ask them, ask Communist Party, why did they do it? Because they are the one do it. We cannot always understand their evil thinking. You have to come to ask them. But what we see already proves that they have done that. It harmed everyone in the world, lead to the historic pandemic, involve everyone.
How do you believe this virus made its way from the lab in Wuhan outside to the rest of the world?
Okay, first, as I said, I have this kind of solid scientific evidence, and also my next report will come out soon to make you fully understand it is. The other thing is, I work in the WHO reference lab, which is the top coronavirus lab in the world in the University of Hong Kong. And since I get deeply into such investigation in secret from the early beginning of this outbreak, I had my intelligence because I also get my own unique network in China, involve the hospital, institute, and also government. Also, I work with the top coronavirologists in the world. So, together with my experience, I can tell you, this is created in the lab. This is from that template owned by China military. And also it is spread to the world to make such damage.
To make such...
I'll put the link for that in the description bar below if you guys are curious. That was Dr. Li Mingyan, the Chinese virologist, talking about how China manufactured coronavirus. Now, this is something we've been talking about clearly since it happened. We saw it happen. We literally saw it come from there. And part of the propaganda is that it is a naturally occurring virus that originated from some cave and that we are being punished for our sins. That's what Pope Francis says, that we are being a terror upon the planet, that we are a plague itself, and that that Mother Earth released the virus to make us change our ways. That's a part of the narrative. That's a part of the propaganda. But it's not. This is a man-made virus. Yes, there is coronavirus in people's DNA. It's a naturally occurring thing. But the one that we are talking about right here is not. You can go look at things like Event 201. You can look at the military games that took place right there. I mean, you got to think about this, gangs. We are literally like a year later, and we're still dealing with this. Like, it doesn't make sense to me. I think that's why I kind of get frustrated, is we are literally here a year later, coming up a year later, and we're just now wearing masks. Everybody's thinking it's cute. The country's being crippled. People aren't working. They're struggling financially. You got a demented old man up there on stage telling you that they're just engaging in peaceful protest. It's like, come on. I think I'm going to go ahead and start closing out this segment. As we're getting towards a little long in the tooth right here. Fauci's warning, quote, hunker down over winter. The second lockdown is coming. This is put up by Max Lava over there at SHTF Plan. They put this up September 14th. It says Dr. Anthony Fauci alluded to a second lockdown, saying Americans need to, quote, hunker down this winter because COVID-19 is, quote, not going to be easy. This is all about control, as the mainstream media reports that the coronavirus cases remain unacceptably high as schools and restaurants reopen and the flu season approaches. We have already been warned that a, quote, darkest winter is in store for us. Could that include another lockdown? Most likely. Prepare for it now because autumn is quickly approaching. We have also already been told that they are planning a second lockdown, so that might be something to at least make preparations for right now. We need to hunker down and get through this fall and winter because it's not going to be easy, Fauci said during a panel discussion with Harvard Medical School on Thursday, according to Market Watch. The director of the National Institutes of Allergy and Infectious Disease drew on his experience and fraud battling the HIV/AIDS epidemic in the 1980s and the 1990s, which began with a handful of cases before becoming a global pandemic that has caused tens of millions of deaths and infected more than 70 people worldwide in the decades since. This is the psychopath Fauci also warned that we should expect the worst and not hold out hope that these tyrants will stop committing terrorism against us. Quote, "We've been through this before," he said. Quote, "Don't ever underestimate the potential of the pandemic, and don't try to look at the rosy side of things." We're being held hostage. That's what's happening. We're being held hostage emotionally, and you have masked thugs out there trying to enforce it. Getting back into this, it says that, quote, "I keep looking at that curve and I get more depressed and more depressed about the fact that we never really get down to the baseline like I'd like," he said. The Centers for Disease Control and Prevention Director Robert Redfield also recently warned that Americans are in, quote, "for the worst fall from a public health perspective we've ever had," citing concerns of a possible twin-demic of COVID-19 cases and the seasonal flu, both overwhelming hospitals. The flu has seen between 140,000 and 810,000 people hospitalized each year since 2010 and is responsible for between 12,000 and 61,000 deaths a year. So they're already telling you, hey, hunker down, get ready. But see, I also feel like that's double speak, because as we're talking about, the 50-day siege that's taking place today and the White House, they're also talking about a darkest winter. I can't help but think of other crazy and chaotic things that are supposed to go down. I just can't help it. Right here, CBP seizes 500,000 counterfeit N95 masks from China. This is one of my first initial worries, right? Were a lot of the masks that we were importing from China, could those have been contaminated with the disease? It happened out there in the UK. Who's to say that it won't happen here? They're saying that the masks themselves are ineffective. It's like you're basically just breathing your own, sickness. Like, this is so Looney Tunes, upside down world. That's why I call it COVID-1984, that we should not listen to Big Brother, that we should not listen to mommy media make these decisions. Yes, be informed. Yes, be educated. Yes, be brought up to speed with all these things that are going on, but don't be dependent upon them for your every bit of crucial information. They don't know what's best for you. They know what they need to do to keep you on the dole, to keep you on their trail. Don't do that. Learn to fight back. Learn to fight back. But speaking of fighting back, we're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, we're going to be talking about the troubling times that are on our horizon and why it's imperative that we begin to fight today. You have food banks warning that we're not going back to normal anytime soon. The cost of living continuing to rise amongst Americans as they struggle to get by COVID-1984, as well as the hashtag cancel Netflix trending after the release of that TV show Cuties, or that movie Cuties. That's right. People don't want to see pedophilia on their screens. But again, this is a part of the externalization of the hierarchy. If they can put it out there that they diddle children and that they do these strange things, it'll separate the flock. And that's exactly what they want. They want the people that are malleable. We'll be getting into that and more on the other side. Troubling times is coming your way. We're going to take a quick break and get into this and more on the other side. Ladies and gentlemen, don't go anywhere. This is Freedom Faction over here on Factions of Freedom. And we'll be right back right after this.
The radical left has taken over the Democratic Party and
food supplies have been completely wiped out. We have a evacuation of all counties. I report complete devastation. We have a giant squall, cloud, covering up everything in the path.
There are forces in this world that remind us of how fragile we are. We thought we were safe. We thought it could never happen to us. Then life like a fog descends upon us, blanketing our memories. Through the haze, we travel its hidden paths, lost in its secret places. And when the storm, turbulent and immovable, forces us to shelter, we remember. It calls to us, calls us back. Back to the ports and the harbors of our past. We fight the currents that pull and drag us off course, not a light or star to chart the way. And when we arrive, we don't always know it at first, the places we once loved guised by time. Then we see it, the place we've been trying to get back to. Safe at last, we've found our way home.
Welcome back, welcome back, welcome back, welcome back. And I was rated a monster, but nobody wants to see monsters no more. They want shady. Yum chop liver. And well, if you want shady, this is what I'll give you. And I don't know the rest of the lyrics, but it's the third segment, and we're a little crazy as we get to the end of the show. Troubling times. You know, again, this has kind of been the theme of everything that's gone on throughout this entire episode, that the times, like, there is nothing new under the sun, and that the times try the man's soul, and that it's the times that make the man, it's the man that fits the time, and this type of nonsense. You get me? That there is a great separation happening, and the Civil War is a very real thing, and people are being divided amongst any type of line, good versus evil, homosexuality versus heterosexuality, sobriety versus intoxication, free versus bonded, masked versus no mask, healthcare versus government versus private healthcare. Yeah, you know, like, everybody's being divided among so many different lines that it is crazy. It's a great separation taking place, and the delusions will grow stronger. And I'm saying, and I'm sure there's people on the other side that say the same thing about me, like, gosh, wow, freedom has become so diluted over these days. But you see, that's a part of what's happening right now. And again, me talking about Patrice Cullors, one of the co-founders of BLM, saying that she practices witchcraft, that's part of the externalization of the hierarchy. That's part of putting it out there in your face to see if you're really about that, to see if you're really about Black Lives Matter, to see if you're really down for the cause. That's something you're really going to hear me say a lot more throughout the entire episode. The externalization of the hierarchy. And I would definitely recommend you guys go check it out, because what this is saying, hey, we're taking this secret, occult, mysterious, like behind the door scenes type stuff, this working that we're doing, and we're going to put it out there to see if people really are about the deeper and the darker mysteries of it. When we're talking about pedophilia, Satanism, Freemasonry, Zionism, secret societies, anything like this, any type of organization that has like a incremental ladder to darkness, you've got to understand that it's not going to come out outright and say, no, we sacrifice children. No, we do that. They have to make it fun and trendy. That's why they're making like it. You have to understand the sophistication of evil. That's why it says, even in the good book, that even the devil can masquerade himself as an angel of light, for he was. And then he fell. People really have to understand, again, the sophistication as well as the delusion that's taking place, and some of the other factors, the contributing factors that aid along this. Social media, social pressure outside of social media, the lack of individual willpower, the lack of information, right? Ignorance, arrogance. There's a lot of different factors that come into this, but that's why we try to take the time to break these things down to you guys so people really understand this. So when I say the externalization of the hierarchy, the externalization of the method, is to inculcate people into their thought process. And what better way to explain this conflict than this? Cancel Netflix trends after Cutie release, as the media critics dismiss outrage at child sexualization as right-wing campaign. That's right, they're saying people who don't go along with hypersexualized children, oh, you're just some right-wing conservative nut job, huh? You don't want to see little kids twerk on the screen? How what's the word I'm looking for? Not posh. How prude of you. There you go. Yeah, how prude of you not to want to see scantily clad little girls dancing provocatively. Let me get into this. We put this up September 11th. It comes from Signs of the Times. It says the debut of Cuties on Netflix has sparked renewed accusations that the streaming giant is sexualizing children. But the New Yorker seems unbothered, sparking backlash after calling the anger over the movie a, quote, right-wing campaign. Huh. It says Cuties, which debuted on Netflix on Wednesday, previously inspired controversy over a poster featuring prepubescent girls posing provocatively. The synopsis accompanying the photo did not help either, describing an 11-year-old who begins to, quote, explore her femininity as she tries to join a twerking dance crew. Netflix apologized for the inappropriate artwork used to promote the French film, but now the footage from the movie itself has critics branding it as, quote, softcore child pornography and deeming those behind it criminals. While the movie has plenty of critics, it also has its defenders. The New Yorker, for instance, called the movie, quote, extraordinary, and said it had become the, quote, target of a right-wing campaign. New Yorker critic Richard Brody backs up his theory by saying that, quote, some well-known figures on the far right are upset over the film. Though if social media reaction is anything to go by, the outrage over the film is hardly restricted to conservatives. Quote, the media is revolting and complicit in the promotion of child sexualization and pedophilia, Blaze editor Jessica Fletcher wrote in the reaction to the New Yorker piece. Quote, targeting pedophilic television is a notice that you can be proud of, right-wingers, pundit David Harrison added. Meanwhile, in the UK's Telegraph review, quote, Cutie is described as a provocative powder keg for an age terrified of child sexuality. Huh. A provocative powder keg for an age terrified of child sexuality. Did you know? That little baby over there is really, really sexy. Like I can't even joke and get in the mindset of some of these perverts, my friends. Like good Lord. evil, wicked stuff. But again, the externalization of the hierarchy. Yeah, we diddle children. Yes, we like to see scantily clad children do provocative things. We practice witchcraft. Yes, abortions are a part of our religious freedom. Yes, we want more of the strange stuff. Like, on a certain level, we really should not be surprised by what we're seeing. If anything, we should expect this type of stuff to come out. I mean, my God, we didn't even have time to cover this a couple weeks ago, but right here, California passes bill reducing penalties for oral anal sex with willing kids, like my Christ. This is SB 145. I don't even want to have that creepy looking pervert pedophile on the screen. Again, in my own personal life, I'm finding out that I can't talk about the witches, the warlocks, the occultists, and the trannies because they are a protected class. What happened to calling these people pedophiles and perverts for sexualizing kids? How is that a protected class? It's not a sexualization. We're trying to green light degeneration, bro. And again, you got to think about this. I had this revelation a couple years ago when we began to really dive into pedophilia. When we had Dr. John A. King on, when we were talking about internet grooming, when we had Hunted and Confronted on, those pedophile hunters, it's a real thing. Pedophiles don't have kids. The ones that do, they end up, unfortunately, messing with them. The way that a pedophile breeds is the same way that a vampire breeds. It infects others with its sickness. And I don't mean to sound vindictive, but it's just how it works. It's not right. Oh, this person just loves kids. Well, how about you have kids and let this man? It's disgusting. It truly is disgusting. Let me get into this and then I'll continue on. This is what I mean by troubling times. We shouldn't be caught off guard by this, but we should also expect this. This is them saying, no, we're coming for your guns. We also want your kids. We're going to castrate. We're going to sterilize and castrate. We're going to do these strange things. That's why at this point, all we have is resistance. Oh, but here, let me get into this article. Like I said, we put this up September 4th. It comes from Your Newswire. It's by Sean Anatolabi. It says California lawmakers passed a bill this week that would reduce penalties for adults who have oral or anal sex with a willing child if the sex offender is within 10 years of age of the victim. The controversial bill now heads to the desk of Governor Gavin Newsom. It says, according to SB 145, the new law would, quote, exempt from mandatory registration as a sex offender, quote, a person convicted of certain offenses involving minors if the person is not more than 10 years older than the minor and if that offense is the only one requiring the person to register. It says Breitbart.com reports that the measure would allow a judge to decide if an adult who engages in acts with a child must register as a sex offender if that person is within 10 years of the victim. I don't even really want to continue to go on into this because it's just perversion. It says in January 2019, the San Francisco Examiner reported on the introduction of the bill by State Senator Scott Wiener, who claimed the current law, which states that oral and anal sex between an adult within 10 years of the age of a willing minor requires the adult to be a registered sex offender, discriminates against LGBT individuals. I can't even. I literally can't even. I like want to throw up in my mouth. I legit want to throw up in my mouth because you're literally saying that it's okay for pedophiles to do this. Like, oh, don't worry, it's okay. It's like you're going to let violent criminals and thugs out of jail because of coronavirus, and then you're going to basically allow for pedophilia. You're going to greenlight pedophilia and not expect children to be in fear of their life. Like right here, suicides among kids and young adults soaring. Yeah. When children are seeing their family throw away their lives and that they can't protect them from this authoritarian and tyrannical government, right? Mom's cucked because she's too addicted to Starbucks. Dad's addicted to his phone, right? Kids are going to kill themselves. No one's standing up for them, right? They have AOC over here telling them that the world's going to end in 10 to 12 years. You know, COVID-19 happens. They can't even go to school and see their friends. Nobody's fighting back. They're not hearing resistance. Everybody's just complying. They're not seeing a bright and a hopeful outlook on the future. They've taken away religion. They've taken away anything that could offer any true understanding generation and decadence, this apocalyptic Fallout style future where nothing's happening, heck yes, you're going to have kids killing themselves. You see, before it was just adults, right? Because this just happened. This was last week. We had suicide awareness. I think this is when this content came out. You had Suicide Awareness Day. You see, before it was adults because people were seeing this go down. They were seeing the economy shut down, people not working, bills catching up. Suicides were occurring. A year's worth of suicide in 4 weeks. It's crazy. That's because of legitimate things. Now we're dealing with the next wave. You see, that and more. Let me read a little bit of this, and then we'll continue on. This is what I mean by the troubling times. This is, again, what I mean by the dehumanization and the depopulation agenda going on. This is what I was trying to allude to earlier when I was talking about that simping over people thought process. It's okay to simp over people. It's okay to have emotions. What's not okay is to turn those things off and act like you're not hurting. We're degenerating at a faster rate, and it needs to be called out. We need to learn to feel again. We need to learn to be human again. We need to stop acting like we're monikers or pages or usernames or chat names or some strange stuff like that, and we need to be people. Let me get into this. We put this up September 11th. It comes from Judge Report Feed. It says increasing numbers of American children and young adults died by suicide in recent years, and the COVID-19 pandemic threatens to continue that trend. Suicide rates among youth ages 10 to 24 increased 57% between 2007 and 2018, data released Thursday from the National Center of Health Statistics shows, rising from almost 7 per 100,000 population to nearly 11. Comparing 3-year averages from 2007 to 2009 to the time period between 2016 and 2018 brought the increase down to 47%. The U.S. suicide rate among all group ages was 14 per 100,000 in 2018. Quote, there are many reasons to suspect that suicide rates will increase this year too, not just because of COVID-19, but because of stress and anxiety seem to be permeating every aspect of our lives, said Shannon Monet, co-director of the Policy, Place, and Population Health Lab at Syracuse University. The 2016 to 2018 suicide rate among those ages 10 to 24 was the highest in more rural states, including Alaska, South Dakota, Montana, Wyoming, and New Mexico. Alaska topped that list with 31.4 young suicides per 100,000 populations. It's probably because there's not a lot of sunlight out there. People not getting sunlight, people not getting healthy, there's a lot of different factors that come into this, why people would kill themselves, man. And I think the reason that I look at the mental health epidemic of this all is just the dangerous concoction and the factors involved in a lot of the things that we're talking about, and how COVID-19 definitely exacerbated a fair amount of this, man. Like, really. It goes on to say the northeastern states, including New Jersey, Rhode Island, New York, Connecticut, and Massachusetts, showed the lower rates. Despite their relatively small numbers, New Jersey experienced a 39% rise, New York saw an increase of about 44%, and Massachusetts showed a jump of 64%. Rates more than doubled in New Hampshire, and the majority of the states showed an increase between 30 to 60%. It says recent research has documented increases in serious psychological distress, major depression, and suicidal thoughts and attempts among youth. A survey conducted this summer by the Center of Disease Control and Prevention found that more than 1/4 of young adults reported having seriously considered suicide in the 30 days before completing the June 24th to 30th questionnaire. Quote, anxiety is high in the population as a whole, thanks to the political and the social unrest. Children are not immune from those stressors, says Monat, who noted economic woes in particular. People aren't well. We've been saying that for quite some time. Even before the pandemic, people aren't well. And the pandemic didn't make it any better. The pseudoscience that's going on there, right? The Stockholm syndrome, the degeneration, the lack of willpower, the lack of courage, that's going to catch up to people. The suicide spirit that we talked about is a very real thing. The nihilism, the apathy, the anxiety, the stress, the depression, all of that stuff concocts in such a dangerous manner, my friends, that people really have to be more aware of it. They really do have to guard on a spiritual level a lot of the things that are taking place right now. You know, just last week we were talking about this. Dreams of social collapse, war, frenzy, bugging out, surveillance, and persecution. You know, and this week, look at everything we've covered, you know, from BLM admitting that they're witches to suicide rates going up to, I didn't even talk about China, India, and Russia preparing war games, but it's very real. You know, when we talk about our spiritual senses being overwritten by physical instincts, everything that I've taught you guys about here is very real. But you see, there's not people that can fight through that. That's what I was trying to allude to with the previous article right there. There are certain people who are twice as susceptible to all of this chaos that need individuals like ourselves to persevere through this so that they can stand up. There is a lot of weakness and cowardice and fearful behavior being promoted and ingratiated. It's not being resisted. You see, that's why a lot of these people who are doing this Antifa stuff, man, I'm telling you, like they're getting to a point to where they're becoming even more radicalized. They're going to burn up. I'm trying to talk to you about having a family. I'm trying to talk to you about being like a respectful member of society, building back, trying to be in the plus column, not the minus column, not taking handouts from the government, pulling yourself up from the bootstraps, being like a stand-up individual, trying to give back to your family and more. That's what I'm trying to talk to you about. The government's not going to help you with any of that. No, sirree. You're the only one that's going to help yourself with that. But you see, that's not the days. That's not what's being talked about. People are wanting more handouts from the government. People are wanting even more that they're unappreciative of and ungrateful for. And so that's causing this weird psychosis where things are getting worse at a faster and faster rate. You know, when we're talking about troubling times and our spiritual senses being overwritten by physical instincts, people understand that there truly is like a disturbance in the force. I started this episode off talking to you good people about just that. About this great separation that's taking place. Is it a great awakening or is it a great deception? Where are you on the lines of things? Like, again, if I were to tell you guys some of the strange things that are happening in my life that are just so synchronistic, not only of the political events that are taking place, but that cosmic convergence, it would sound like something out of a movie. And so when I'm coming before you guys week after week trying to explain to you like the incredible and almost awe-inspiring and awesome like reality we live in, you just got to get out there and see it for yourself. You got to remove the blinders. I wouldn't be able to do what we're doing without God and without like the faith that I have. And without all the experience and the things that I've been through that are propelling me to do even more. I'm just getting started. And so, yeah, we can look at all this stuff and freak out, but at the same time, what are we going to do about it? There's only so much that we can do about it, but there's also so much that one person can do. We talked earlier about it, these extremist far right and far left people who were sharing memes about killing cops and doing all this other crazy stuff. Well, what about the radical truth seekers who are over here trying to build society off the ashes of this stuff? We need to figure out how to become more of a power instead of just like a whisper in people's ear. We're like the conscience that people don't want to listen to. Well, like I said beforehand, truth has no sides, but actions do have consequences. Actions do have consequences. So I'm going to just quickly, briefly talk about this, not more dreams and visions. But the fact that, again, there is a deep spiritual working happening right now. And longtime listeners of the show, you've heard me talk about it, tuning into that spiritual sense, strengthening that muscle, getting closer to God, understanding His truth, seeking it out. It's a very real thing, and that's all I can really recommend to you guys, is that it's going to intensify. As I say this to you right now, you know, like I said, they're preparing for the siege on the White House, and this is just this year. Who knows where it's going to be next year? The Pentagon, like I said before, they've been planning for Zebellion for the next 5 years, a Bitcoin rebellion where they're going to start doing more of this type of stuff, occupying other parts of the country. Like, my friends, really think about what I'm about to break down to you. On the episode I did, Exposing Enslavement with David Nino Rodriguez, we talked about this, about the Western states breaking off and seceding. California, I think it's like California, New Mexico, Colorado, and other places like that, breaking off, seceding from the nation, and holding resources hostage. That's the political structure of that. Now imagine, say, if they were to have Portland involved in that mix. And then you have Antifa operating the way that they do with Chaz, running these organized operations, going to different parts of the nation, conducting like strategic strikes, taking people's resources, and then only doing transactions in Bitcoin. It sounds crazy what I'm talking about, but this is why I freaked out earlier this year and did a mini cast strictly on this, strictly on Zebellion. So now not only do you have a separatist society in your nation, but you also have a paramilitary foot troop organization willing to carry out all kinds of other operations that we have no understanding of. Like, things are about to get crazy. So when I use comic book references of Gotham, of Arkham, of just all this stuff, it's the only way I can comprehend it. And the psycho-spiritual configuration of what I'm breaking down to you guys is what you have to look at. That spirit of rebellion is a very, very real thing. That delusional spirit is a very real thing. Being obedient is one thing and being submissive to God is another. But that spirit of rebellion, that delusional thought process that I've tried to break down to you guys over the couple of weeks, it is going to be so hot over these next couple of months that it's going to dictate what the next couple of years is going to look like. And I can't really say what I'll be saying then. I really can't, because things have happened so fast that it's like a powder keg overnight. It blows my mind. That's for sure. So when you're having dreams of social unrest and civil unrest, you're not alone, is what I'm trying to get around to saying. You are not alone. And we are literally only getting started. But here, to go back into the content and get back started with the show right here. Wisconsin Food Bank warns, quote, "We're not going back to normal anytime soon." This comes from Zero Hedge. We put this up September 14th. It says, readers may recall Nouriel Roubini told Bloomberg TV in late August, about a week before the stock market rolled over, that Wall Street remained disconnected from the financial hardships crushing Main Street America. Roubini said, Main Street is struggling. For more color on the so-called struggle as the virus-induced recession continues to plunge the working poor into financial misery as the fiscal cliff enters the 39th day, a new report sourced locally in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, outlines how a top food bank in Milwaukee, Racine, Waukesha metropolitan area, quote, expects a spike in emergency food needs. Quote, "We're not going back to normal anytime soon," said Feeding America Eastern Wisconsin president and CEO Patty Hatback, who spoke with the Milwaukee Journal-Sentinel. Habig said that there is, quote, "no illusion that the stress in the emergency food system will ease up, given the ongoing coronavirus pandemic and the spikes among college and students and children." However, she said the food bank supply chain has slightly improved thanks to government intervention. Quote, so far through the end of the calendar year, we feel good about accessing the food we need," she said. The supply chain is not as disrupted as it was at the beginning of the pandemic. Habig said that the Coronavirus Food Assistance Program from the Coronavirus Aid, Relief, and Economic Security Act, CARES Act, allowed her organization to purchase more food to handle increasing demand as the virus-induced recession resulted in widespread job loss across the metro area. She added that the USDA's Farmers to Family Food Box program has been helpful with keeping the food bank well supplied. Habig's warning about a, quote, spike in the food bank demand comes as the search term food bank in the state has risen this week above the mid-April level when food banks nationwide were, quote, overwhelmed with record demand from broke and hungry Americans who lost their jobs due to the virus lockdown. And tell us how the sudden spike in demand is symbolic of a V-shaped economic recovery. Or, as the reporter with Bill Gates said, a K-shaped recovery. Yeah, more of that foolishness is what we're living with. And I wonder what that K-shaped recovery is going to look like. Are you going to have people who are in favor of getting back to work, in favor of stopping all this nonsense? Who knows? You know, because one of the bigger things that we need to look at is the fact that people are not working. So while you have extremely rich people, you've got Bill Gates, you've got Donald Trump, you've got, you know, Biden and all these other people over here talking about this type of stuff. People aren't working. Over a third of America aren't working. They don't care about any of this political nonsense. And because of them not working, check this out right here. The cost of living continues to rise rapidly as Americans are struggling to get by. Yeah. Over 50% of households in major cities are struggling financially. And it seems like week after week, we're talking more and more about how this recession is hitting. People not working, 11 million evictions over the next 4 months. Like, people aren't really conceptualizing this. So yeah, suicides are going to go up. Mom and dad are fighting about the finances, right? Little Timmy doesn't know whether or not he's going to go to college because he doesn't want to go get brainwashed. Doesn't see anybody fighting back about this type of stuff. He can no longer order all those games he had on Xbox. You got to think about this, guys. Like, this is me trying to humanize every other individual that's living right now. This is the socioeconomic reformation. This is the fourth industrial revolution. This is that great reset and just the beginning of it. We're not even done with this year. Let me get into this. We'll continue on. This is by Max Lavo over there at SHTF Plan. He put this up September 15th. It says that the Bureau of Labor Statistics just released new data that says that the cost of living is going up as Main Street economy crashes and the dollar loses its purchasing power. This also comes as more and more Americans continue to struggle to get by in the aftermath of the government's reaction to the scamdemic. The new numbers released are comparing the Consumer Price Index, which is essentially the price of common things we pay for all averaged together of 2019, to that of 2020. The number has gone up. It says that the Consumer Price Index for all urban consumers increased 0.4% in August on a seasonally adjusted basis after rising 0.6% in July. The U.S. Bureau of Statistics reported today. Over the last 12 months, all the items increased 1.3% before seasonal adjustments. It says since the Federal Reserve, the central banks, is continuing to bail out corporations and create money out of thin air, inflation and costs for basic necessities will continue to rise. Some areas of the economy are being hit harder than others too. The cost of food has jumped in the air in the Bay Area of California, propelled by meat, poultry, and fish prices that have skyrocketed, joining soaring electricity costs, according to a new report by Mercury News. Meat, fish, and poultry prices have soared a whopping 17.4% over the past 12 months, ending in August in the Bay Area. This means that the prices are at a superheated pace that's 11 times greater than the region's cost of living during the same one-year period. Because the cost of living is going up as the economy is struggling for everyday folks, it's important to make a plan. Preparedness should include financial emergencies, even though the dollar is crashing. Having a little money on hand to be able to pay 3 months worth of bills will help you get through the tough times. All it would take to eliminate the middle class is one more lockdown, and that's exactly what Dr. Anthony Fauci is pushing for. As people are literally struggling, trying to get by, Dr. Fauci is saying that, no, we can handle another lockdown. Yeah, no, it's not like people are working. Yeah, we see how Australia's doing it, and we think we could do it pretty well like them. So we think we might do it. And this came out just last week. I'm just going to read a little bit of it. It says over 50% of households in America in major cities are struggling financially. We talked about that. That's part of the great summer exodus of 2020. Why people are leaving, not only because of the rising violent crime, but also their price in rent, the cost of living. They can only adjust so much, and so they're moving. I don't think I'll read a whole lot because this is a very lengthy, but this is at least half of all households in those cities. 53% in New York City, 56% in Los Angeles, 50% in Chicago, and 63% in Houston reported facing serious financial problems, including depleted savings, problems paying credit card bills, and affording medical bills. It says Black and Latino households in all 4 cities were particularly vulnerable. In New York, 62% of black households and 73% of Latino households reported struggles. In Los Angeles, those numbers are 52 and 71%, respectively, while 69% of black households and 63% of Latino households in Chicago have faced the same. And most drastically in Houston, 81% of black households and 77% of Latino households said their financial issues were serious. Yeah, because people can't not work. And then the pittance we're giving them is not equivalent. It's not sustainable in their eyes. And so as we see all these things happening and all these things coming to pass, the 50-day siege on the White House, the externalization of the hierarchy, admitting that indeed they conduct all these strange workings and that they're doing it to bring down America and to blaspheme against God. As we see all these things of almost prophetic nature come to pass, you've got Donald Trump signing the Abrahamic Peace Accord. Now, why is that important? I have been on a somewhat, I suppose you could say, Christian tip lately, right? Somewhat of a Christian tip, I think, is the best way for me to say it. I'm not, again, I'm not sure if you'd say full Christian. I'll just stick with the pseudo-Christian just to kind of put it into context for people. But why is this important? Why are we talking about peace accords, Israel, Donald Trump, and all this different type of stuff? We don't really cover that over here. Because it signifies the time of Jacob's troubles. I'm just going to read this article headline real quick. It says, Israel signs historic Abraham Accord peace treaty, and in doing so, the prophetic time clock that leads straight to the time of Jacob's trouble. This is written by Jeffrey Grider over there at Now the End Begins. He put this up September 15th. It says, quote, this day, Benjamin Netanyahu said, speaking of the Abraham Accord peace treaty signing at the White House today, quote, heralds a new dawn of peace. Very royal. Seems like a very gallant event. So I'm going to lead this. I'm going to let this play as I read to you guys a little bit about Abraham, or at least about Jacob's troubles, what we see taking place and why I find this so not alarming, but at the same time informative and educational to everything that's going on. So before I get into this treaty, Palestine, and all these other things, I wanted to look into what is Jacob's troubles, right? What is Jacob's troubles? And this is just reading real quick from the Compelling Truth. It says Jacob's troubles, or Jacob's distress, refers to the difficulties the Jewish people will be facing during the 7-year tribulation period. It says during this time, the Jewish temple will be rebuilt yet desecrated. The Antichrist will break a covenant and set himself up as the ruler and expect to be worshipped. So we're talking about the Antichrist. We're talking about prophetic stuff. We're talking about not necessarily the end of days, but all this stuff and more. I find this just so incredibly, again, prophetic to look at. And so I wanted to get a little bit more research, a little bit more information about Jacob's troubles, about what was going on and what that really meant. And so I'm going to go off from reading to you guys this the article post, and I'm just going to read a little bit about the time of Jacob's troubles and what it is while this clip is going on of Donald Trump signing the Abraham Peace Accord. It says the time of trouble comes from Jeremiah 37. This says, quote, "Alas, for that day is great, so that none is like it. It is even in the time of Jacob's trouble, but he shall be saved out of it." What is this time of distress for Jacob? It's the previous verse. God promised he would someday restore his people to their land, meaning the land of Israel. Despite a great time of distress for the Jewish people, the Lord would save them from it. Jeremiah 30, chapter 30, verses 8 through 9, make it clear that this time would be a period in which God's people no longer served other masters, but would serve the Lord and David their king, whom I will raise up for them. The imagery in the Jeremiah passage most clearly resembles the predictions given by Jesus in Matthew 24. For example, Jesus called the trials that would take place among the Jewish people the beginning of the birth pains. In 1 Thessalonians chapter 5, verse 3, Paul also describes this period by saying that, quote, "While people are saying there is peace and security, then sudden destruction will come upon them as labor pains come upon a pregnant woman, and they will not escape." Jacob's troubles, or Jacob's distress, refers to the difficulties for the Jewish people will face during the 7-year tribulation period. During this time, the Jewish temple will be rebuilt, yet desecrated. The Antichrist will break a covenant and set himself up as a ruler and expected to be worshipped. He will force all people to receive a mark to buy or sell goods. In addition, much war and famine will occur, with Jews fleeing Jerusalem to the mountain. Despite those troubles, the Lord will fulfill his promises. In addition to protecting his people, he will return in victory. Following his victory, the Messiah will rule for Jerusalem in peace for 1,000 years. Following one last attack by Satan, the Lord will defeat his enemies, complete his final judgment, and establish a new heavens, a new earth, and a new Jerusalem where he will dwell with his people forever. All of these prophecies develop more fully in Revelation and helpful in better in understanding the time of Jacob's troubles mentioned by Jeremiah. Further, with the coming of Jesus Christ as the Messiah, some of the prophecies of Jeremiah have already been fulfilled. In addition, Israel has already been reestablished as a nation in 1948, following 1900 years without a nation for the Jewish people. This historic change offers evidence that God has not abandoned the Jewish people, but has kept his promises to bring Israel back to the land in the last days. Though Israel will continue to experience difficulties now and in the future, God promises he will ultimately restore his people and offer peace during a time when he rules over his people. So that's the time of Jacob. That's why this is such a big deal, is because this is a prophetic time clock signifying so much. Now, I guess I was a little bit late when it came to understanding Israel, Jerusalem, Palestine, and all of this. And I still am, as you can tell. But what I'm trying to point out when talking about this, the troubling times, is that even right now, as they say peace and security, we know that that means everything but. Yeah, they want your peace and security. They want you to be obedient. But what does that mean? Wasn't it Benjamin Franklin who said, those who offer up their freedom in the name of security deserve neither? And isn't that what they're talking about? Peace and security? Isn't that what this prophetic situation is supposed to exemplify? Isn't that what they're saying? Peace among the nations? They're saying Trump is Israel's bag boy, that we're giving all of our money to Israel, to the Jews. This type of racial talk right here. Very, very interesting. So I think like what I'm trying to point out when I bring this up is there are time clocks outside of what we pay attention to taking place. There are so many symbolic events taking place that a lot of people can't catch it. You know, is the Biden-Harris administration embarrassing? Is Biden harassing? Is Trump and Pence's administration part of the Trump bits, as talked about in the Bible, signifying the times that we're living in? Let me read a little bit of this article of Jeffrey Grider, of what he wrote over there. Like I said, they put this up September 15th. This comes from Now the End Begins. And it says, it was a beautiful ceremony, perfectly coordinated with a background track as lush and beautiful as a Disney movie. In fact, my daughter Kelsey got all excited and came running across the room because she thought it was a Disney movie. But this was no fabrication from Hollywood. This was the Abraham Accord, end times, real deal moment of Israel beginning their short but intense journey into the coming time of Jacob's trouble. So let's talk for a moment about the coming two-state solution that triggers the Battle of Armageddon at the end of the tribulation. Joel gives us a heads up for that one. It says, quote, "For behold, in those days and in that time, when I shall bring again the captivity of Judah and Jerusalem, I will also gather all nations and will bring all them down into the valley of Jehoshaphat, and will plead with them there for my people and for my heritage Israel, whom they have scattered among the nations, and parted my land." Joel chapter 1, verses 1 and 2. It says, inside the language of the Abraham Accord, you will find the wording that briefly but powerfully states that in order to gain a peace treaty with the UAE, Israel has to do two things. First, they have to give up any and all aspirations of annexing anything until at least 2024. Secondly, Israel must agree to work to create a Palestinian state from within the borders outside, and around the nation of Israel as it currently stands. It says, what does Israel gain from signing the Abraham Accord? Enhanced global status, a powerful partner in the UAE, and billions of dollars in the economic contracts and incentives now that the trade relations are open. In other words, as your King James Bible told you would happen, they took the bait and are now on the hook of the end times Bible prophecy. Troubling times. So as they say, peace and security, we understand everything but. And as you have all nations gathering, the same way that I'm telling you with Antifa, all these other groups that are going on, these protests that are taking place, you have all kinds of different nationalities, all kinds of different groups, organizations coming together to literally change and blaze a path for the New World Order. There's nothing else for me to say. There truly is nothing else for me to say. We are living in prophetic days, and I think that's why a lot of people are caught off guard, because it's so overwhelming that it makes sense. We're all just waiting to see how it's going to go down. Ladies and gentlemen, this is Executing the Siege, Second Wave Fears, and Troubling Times.
However, ladies and gentlemen, that's all I'm really happy you guys and gals. I know. It's getting real crazy out there. It's getting prophetic and almost pathetic how much they try to deny it. All I can really try to say, team, is get prepared, get right. Take the time to really understand half of what I'm saying to you. I don't sit up over here and break this stuff down to you guys week after week because it's fun or because I get like some kind of sick thrill. The world is moving at an ever-increasing rate, and we need to understand what's happening. We can either go the way of the world or be in the world and not of the world. But like I said, ladies and gentlemen, that's all I really have for you guys and gals. All the videos I'll have in the link in the description bar below, as well as the link to My Patriot Supply so you guys can get yourself some storable goods. If you have any questions, feel free to email me. I'll have that in the description bar below as well. And remember, guys and gals, stay vigilant. Expose lies and share truth. This is Noisera, Freedom Faction, out.